Okay, hello everybody. This is WolfandStorm, aka Lisa. We are live for our Doctor Who Fireside chat. Everybody, please welcome my friend ProblemBeing to our discussion.
Hello, good evening.
You guys will see at the bottom of our little window here, we have the hashtags that we subscribe to: Revolution of the Whovians, RIP Doctor Who. We are Who United Hartnell First. Please, if you see any other hashtags that are not that, don't go
Yes,
along with it.
especially the not my doctor thing. We are not the not my. I know they're very desperate to cast us in this light that we are the not my doctor crowd. We are not. They're a
And for
totally separate
those
entity.
of the Jody crowd that are trying to appropriate the revolution of the Whovians, because I have seen that all over Twitter for the past week,
I
ever
know.
since Noel invented this thing. Thanks.
Great.
Great
Thank you.
publicity.
Yeah, I mean I was waiting for it to be leapt on. I didn't know to what extent they would try to usurp it, but I kind of planned this with Noel that it would irritate them so much that they would probably try and co-opt it. I wasn't sure, but they did, and it worked out brilliantly. And not only did they make it such that it um it got so far, and it managed to easily make it open for me to put in the little video I made, but it auto-filled. So it just made it so much easier. Oh great. I just have to type in three letters, the hashtag RE.
After
There
all
it
their
is.
work
Boom.
trying to make it seem like we were the bad guys, all they wound up doing was allowing that the hashtag the trends
Well, they think
on
they're the
Twitter.
revolutionaries, you see. So we kind of thought we want to subvert that mentality because yeah, they think they're the good guys. They're ideologically possessed. They cast out everyone and cast aspersions on those people as being Islamophobes and all the rest of it. And so we kind of thought, well, this is quite a, because I like plays and words. I mean, my name tells you everything you need to know. It has multiple meanings. So I thought we'll try this revolution of the Whovians thing, because I thought, well, it works in two levels. One, that we are the revolution, and that the revolution really has happened. They haven't caught on to it yet. Just look at the ratings. And the other thing is the revolution of Whovie. It speaks to them because they think they're the revolutionaries, and it speaks to their sort of mentality that they are the ones who are going to change everything, change the world, because it's all about change. No, it's not.
I don't
That's an
mind you
element.
changing the world. Just change it outside of our show, please.
Start with changing yourselves and actually start thinking for yourselves, and start giving into peer pressure and to these expectations put upon you by other people. I think when you sacrifice your individuality for a sense of group identity, I think that you're more the Cybermen than you are the Doctor at that point. It is a hive-minded thing. So you will be like us, or you will be deleted. It's that kind of.
Speaking of Cyber, that's a good jumping off point when you consider what we were discussing about the Doctor Who magazine and that gloriously hideous cover that they did in the latest issue. This is what I was primarily wanting to talk about. I did, in my last video, I was going over an article that one of the other shills did about how the show has no canon, and that it's basically a clumsy retcon of itself. And that's basically what the major article in the most recent issue, number 554, 555. Yeah.
Well, they can't even get their own canon right, because I'm pretty sure they had a 500th edition and then like another one.
This is basically the BBC's desperate ploy, I guess, to explain away their huge mistake with the timeless children ruining canon by saying, well, it doesn't matter because the show has no canon anyway. Bullshit.
Yeah, of course it's bullshit. How can you have a serial and no canon? I mean, by default, you're going to have canon.
The article basically starts off with them saying they have this big blown up picture of an early draft of the character descriptions of Ian and Barbara and the Doctor. And at the time, their names weren't even Ian and Barbara. This is when it was really, really early days. And so they're saying, well, based on that, you know, he started off as this professor who was from an alien world, but he didn't know where it was. He couldn't remember how to get back. He was disconnected from them, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, now he's a Time Lord. Hold up. Hold up. He didn't have much of a background when the show started. And I don't know how it is for the way TV is presented in the UK, because your guys' series are ridiculously short compared to ours.
Yes.
So it takes a lot longer for plot development and character development and for a series to solidify itself when you only got 6 or 10 episodes to work with, versus when in the US here, when you have 22. You can take a whole first season here.
Well, back in the 60s, Doctor Who was by today's standards a long series. You know, it was X amount of episodes. I mean, it was a lot more than we do now, where it's like 10 episodes or 8 to 10 episodes for a series. I mean, it was like twice as big back in the 60s. But they wrote these things on the fly, filmed them on the fly. You know, I mean, it's like 2 takes, done, move on. Yeah. So that's why a lot of mistakes kept in, because they didn't have time. I think half the time they were afraid that if they stayed in over time, that I think the electrics got switched off on a specific time. It's all part of the rules of the union or something like that.
And don't you guys have that thing? Don't you guys have that thing where you have to do the tea break in the middle somewhere?
Yeah. I mean, those things I think sort of became more legislated much later on. I mean, I did a lot of film extra work, so I know all the ins and outs of that. But back in the 60s, I think it was probably quite different. But yeah, tea. You can't.
You know, that was one of the reasons why James Cameron was so fucking pissed off with the cast and with the crew of Aliens, because they kept insisting on a tea break, and it was to piss him off because he couldn't get all his shit done.
Yeah, yeah, he was quite a fastidious man.
But the point is that when the show first started, okay, in the US, and I made a point of making this clear on the last video that I did. In the US, you have a season can usually encompass 22 to 23 episodes, and that usually gives you long enough time to solidify your character, solidify the backstory, solidify the overall storyline, and kind of start building your world. But because it's a freshman season, between freshman and sophomore seasons of a show, at least in the US, there's always bound to be changes. Some characters are going to go through changes about, you know, where they work, or maybe pieces of their past, or, you know, even names, because the first season of a show is always kind of dedicated to trying to understand what the audience likes or dislikes about it. They take that feedback and they go, okay, this doesn't work, I'm going to throw it out. And I'm going to give you an example. I don't know if you've seen it because it's a US show and it's kind of old because it's 80s, so you might not be familiar, but it's a good example. When Remington Steele premiered in 1982, here, the first season of the show, the core cast was 4 people. You had Remington Steele, Laura Holt, and Bernice Fox, and I forget the 4th. But by the time the first season was over, the 2 extra characters were gone. They got rid of them, and they kind of combined them together and replaced them with a different person. Are you going to tell me that all of a sudden it's no longer canon that those 2 were ever there?
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
They're still there. Just because the Doctor started off as someone who was disconnected from his planet and was trying to find a way back, doesn't necessarily make it untrue that he's now a Time Lord.
Yeah, but this is the thing. This is the thing that we hear this over and over again, and now sort of crystallized by these people at Doctor Who magazine, that all of these add-ons and expansions upon the character and on the show over the earliest period, you know, from Hartnell through the Golden Age, certainly through the 70s, early 80s, I'd say, they were creating canon. They were not retconning these things. They had to be clever. They had to expand on certain things. They were very clever and very careful not to overexpose the character of the Doctor. They piled on things here and there, hinted at things here and there, but altogether it created a universe. They were starting to understand that they needed to create his own universe. So that's the creative process. That's a creative writing process. Now, you cannot conflate what is happening now with what was happening then. Because what is happening now is a retcon. Because it's trampling over established canon and law that they spent decades carefully crafting, not always getting right. Granted, we understand that there were a lot of things which didn't add up and make sense. That's where the fandom comes in and creates all these wonderful sort of fan theories and gets everyone talking, and you get Big Finish and things like that who are quite good at sort of expanding on those sort of threads and things like that. So that's always good. That's inclusive in a way of giving fans a chance to involve themselves in the universe. What happens now is that they've stamped all over that and said, right, all that, we're taking all that away. It's gone. All those fan theories that you spent decades lovingly crafting away, and all the expanded universe stuff, all the Big Finish things, which, you know, some people are saying that's canon, some people say it's not canon because it's not on the TV, etc. Fine, whatever. Whichever side of the fence you're on, that it's immaterial. Gone, right? It's now different. It's different. It's changed fundamentally from the start, from the very beginning. It's now all changed. Everything the Master said, everything you know is a lie. That's a big, bold statement. And I think a lot of these people who support this do not seem to understand how big a deal this is to people like us who've been watching since, in my case, since at least 1979. I think it's what my earliest TV memory was, Tom Baker facing off against Stavros and the Daleks in I think it was Revelation of the Daleks. And they don't get it. And they argue and argue and argue that this fits in with canon. No, it doesn't. It replaces canon. It's so arrogant in the way that it just completely runs roughshod after all those wonderful, amazing, creative decisions that the writers of the day did. And they've undone it all for this new narrative. And it's either you get on board or you go. That's the ultimatum that we've been handed to. In certain ways, in ways where, certainly in my case and a few other people I know, with death wishes, death threats. You don't belong here. You're a bigot. You're this. You're that. If you don't like it, you're this and that and the other. And it's unbelievable.
You know, what they don't seem to get in the article is that you were saying that they started to develop the whole idea of the Doctor being a Time Lord around towards the end of Troughton's era, because it explained, like, you know, they brought the Time Lords in, they tried him for meddling supposedly, and then forced the regeneration on him. That was the first time we actually got to see, like, the Time Lords and all their glory or whatever. That's not a retcon. That's adding to already established.
It doesn't contradict anything.
Right. It doesn't contradict, but there was a reason they had to do this. As soon as they threw out the historicals and decided to make it fully, just embrace it as a sci-fi show, they had no choice. They had to give it, they had to expand it and give it canon, because unlike dramas and comedies, sci-fi fantasy lives and dies on canon. Because it is so complex. These shows are so complex. If you don't
when you've
have
got a show that's over 57 years old, if you don't have a canon to hang on to or something to refer to, if you don't have some form in a time travel show, you need a sense of linearity. Otherwise, if you don't have that linear timeline, you're going to get so lost. And it's there as a fixed. I mean, the Doctor says this himself. You know, points in time are fixed in time. So those things have to remain in place because they are fixed in time. So all those things that were fixed in time are now no longer fixed in time. And this is the great undoing. This is what they don't understand. This is how it has absolutely just undermined all of that hard work, all of that lovingly created mythos that has been lovingly crafted for decades, has just been thrown out with the baby with the bathwater.
One of the examples that they were trying to show specifically about how the Doctor retcons himself, apparently, is the fact that from one incarnation to another, there's always something is always different. Like Pertwee's version of the Doctor was skilled in Aikido, but then that skill somehow disappears until I guess 13 does a little bit of it. We know that the Doctor has some sort of telepathic ability, but only a few of the Doctors actually use it until 10, who was particularly adept at it. So they're trying to say that each show runner is retconning what the Doctor can or can't do. No, that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is you're forgetting from one generation to the next, every time that he changes, his personality shifts. And what he views as important to use also changes. Just because 3 like to use Aikido doesn't necessarily mean 4 will. Just because Tom Baker decided to use telepathy a few times doesn't mean that the others did. 10 was just really adept at it and really reliant on it. And it was probably mostly because by that point, he was so lonely in his own mind that he would have sought out anybody to connect with, which is why he connected so strongly with Rose, because before her, there was, do you know what it's like to lose billions of people in your mind all at once? All at once.
The Doctor is a complex character, and my main bugbear with a lot of the classic, not the classic era, the modern era, is they make him too much of a clown, and I think it sort of belies it sort of fails to really show that level of sort of story of his development. I think the Time War was, at the time, I was absolutely devastated, because it was like, what do you mean, no more Time Lords? He's not going to run into any more Time Lords? I thought, no, this can't be happening. But it was a very clever, clever starting off point.
Yes, it was.
Because it wasn't destroying canon. It was creating a new story that was in canon. It was all still within canon. It had that continuity. 9 was a continuation of the 1996 movie, and it's all flowed in. Of course, there are going to be mistakes. Hey, timey-wimey, as we're told, right? So it's going to have problems. It's going to have problems within canon. The Morbius thing was a mistake, in my opinion, and Chibnall's taken this mistake. I mean, even though they admitted that they wanted there to be previous Doctors prior to Hartnell, at the time, you have to bear in mind that was only 10, 15 years, whatever it was, from its creation. It was still fairly new, so it wasn't seen as such a big slight on Bill Hartnell as it was then. For them it was just a laugh, really. They were dressing themselves up in silly costumes because they couldn't hire any actors at the time or something to to put on these silly costumes and take these photos. But I think they were very acutely aware soon after, when fans were up in arms about it, even then, that they thought, well, we need to sort this out. This is where they brought in the 12 generation rule. So I mean, they retconned that out, because I think that they realized that they're just opening a whole can of worms with that.
I mean, honestly, the rest of the article. Oh wait, well, the Cartmel master plan with the whole Morbius doctors. I firmly believe that those doctors were not doctors; that they were regenerations of Morbius, who was the other Time Lord that he was.
That has been long accepted by the fandom for a long time.
It's the
but the other thing is well, it was a mind game. It was a mind game. The Doctor could have been toying with him, saying, "Yeah, I'm much older than I really." It was a game.
But the bigger point is, the more important point is that even though Cartmel had this master plan, at the end of the day, even he knew that it would never work.
Well, he said
so much had been established before. He did not, and even he wouldn't have had the hubris and the fucking ego.
No, and they leapt on Cartmel plan as a justification for the Timeless Child. The thing is, Cartmel himself went on a stream with a bunch of these people, and he flat out said no. He hadn't seen it, but he was told about it sort of by the people on the stream, and he said, no, you do not do an origin story for the Doctor. It's Doctor Who for a reason. Contriving this kind of thing is disingenuous. It's not honest. It's not good writing. He said that once you do that, you've removed the mystery. You can create a new mystery out of it. It still undermines the Who in Doctor Who. He didn't like it. He said that his Cartmel plan was not an origin story. He actually hired what's his name? Ian something or other. I think he was on the payroll or something for a while. Who was a expert Doctor Who fan, and he understood the lore. He understood the canon, and kept him on the straight and narrow, so that there would be no destruction of canon or lore, to have a sort of reverence for everything that's been established. And also to expand on his ideas as well, the looms and all this.
Isn't he the one that's been like shunned by?
Yes, fandom? I think so. Yeah, who's done more for Doctor Who than those buggers ever will in their entire lives. But anyway,
he kept them on the straight and.
Well, narrow. He said, you can do that, but you can't do that. I mean,
exactly.
If just having someone with an encyclopedic knowledge is not a bad thing. It's an asset. You can go close to the edge. You may color slightly over the edges, but you don't undo the mythos and lore. It's not your playground, okay? Every writer, every showrunner, since even quite early on, was very sort of understanding. I think Hinchcliffe was a bit of a maverick. He was young, so the Morbius Doctor thing was quite him showing his macho whatever. I'm going to do this. I'm going to play around with that. But I think even he understood at that point that okay, better sort of pull my neck in a bit here.
It's true, because if you answer all the questions about the Doctor and you take away that mystery, which is what Chibnall's trying to do, then there's nothing left. It's like, who the hell is going to want to watch anymore if there's no, if there's no questions left to be answered, if there's no mystery surrounding who he is.
Well, they say it's a new mystery. They say it's a new mystery because this girl's from another dimension, another universe or something. She just appeared out of nowhere. So there's a whole new mystery to search and figure out. It's like, well, we never figured out any of the other stuff. So why do we need to? Who cares at this point? This is now an immortal god who can live forever. There's no threat or danger anymore. The Doctor's not who we thought he was anymore. It's now this United Colors of Benetton. I mean, if you want diversity, what in Doctor Who, which it's always had. Why fundamentally focus on that character? You know, he is a character that has been through our lives for decades, established. They want to undermine that old, stale, pale male thing and retcon it that he was always a girl of color, because that's the most important thing. I mean, how fucking racist, how tokenistic do you want to be? I mean, Chibnall even wrote that you know, out comes this beautiful little black girl, brown girl, or whatever he wrote. It's something like that, and it's just like, that is just so divisive. No lines, not a single line said. Not one of these timeless children said a word. Tet Taeyoon, the most important scientist in the history of Gallifrey, who tortured this child to death multiple times to make it regenerate, was the most important thing in Time Lord lore. Never mentioned, never heard of before, nothing. But that's because it was a lie, because of the patriarchal society of the Time Lords, and that she was exhibiting masculine traits.
The most important scientist in the history of Time Lord lore. Somehow I think Rassilon would have a bone to pick with that shit.
Yeah, not a single mention of Rassilon, not a single mention of Omega, nothing. And if they wanted to talk about the Cartmel plan, then why not make the Doctor the Other? This is not the Other. This is something altogether different. This is another Other.
They insert this master plan, which, I mean, is pretty much just Chibnall's ridiculous fanfic.
Well, it is, and he's admitted that it was a fanfic he's had since he was a kid. And I'm sorry, that is not a good idea. When you have a fanfic idea as a kid, it's shit. It's always going to be shit.
So you're saying not only can he regenerate ad infinitum, he's pretty much space Jesus.
She, or they,
she
or them,
is pretty much space Jesus, so that takes out all the tension. So now whenever we see another...
We have the chosen one, Space Jesus.
So now whenever we see a regeneration episode, which is usually some of the most dramatic episodes that the show produces, because it's so, like, intrinsic to the show, whenever you know that you're watching an episode where one doctor is going to change into another doctor, it gets high ratings because it's so dramatic. It's so, like, now it's just like, oh well, that's another one, click. You know, it's not even important anymore.
All drama has been removed.
Not only that, but now you're saying that whatever is not even from Gallifrey and could possibly be from another dimension. But you've allowed it to have the biology of a Gallifreyan.
Yeah.
The Doctor has the biology of a Gallifreyan, top to bottom.
Yeah.
But he's not from Gallifrey.
No.
Yeah, that don't make sense.
Isn't that so well thought out? Brilliant. Well done, Chibnall. You've really, really sewed yourself into a nightmarish shite. And it's like...
Don't forget Trenzalore with the Time Lords giving him a whole new regeneration cycle.
Pointless! Meaningless! Everything now is meaningless. Look, have you heard the current rumor? I don't know what the validity of these rumors are or where they come from. A source. So, whatever. So, I heard this from Rabbi, and he said that they plan for the next series to insert the timeless child and all the variants of it in between all the Doctor's regeneration. So not only is he absolutely stamped all over Doctor Who with his own fat, ugly face, all over Doctor Who, he now wants to sprinkle the shit throughout. So it integrates through every single Doctor. It permeates every regeneration. So whenever we look back at a regeneration in the classic era, all you'll think of is Chibnall's fat, ugly, fat face with his chin ball face.
Wait. Is this going to be classic and new or just classic?
All of it across the board.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah.
Hell no.
I can't verify it.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you.
There are some regenerations in New Who that you can't fuck with because of how they were originally written. Specifically, the regeneration from 9 to 10. You can't fuck with that because Rose did that. Rose Tyler did that when she was Bad Wolf. When he took it out of her, he did it to save her life. He gave his life to save hers. There's no regeneration between them. She never left his side. She was with him the entire time. So, no way. No way.
Well,
no fucking how.
Chibnall doesn't think things through. This is his big mistake. He has the biggest slice of the pie, and he can't fit enough of it in his gob. He cannot chew on what he's created or destroyed, to be more precise. He doesn't understand what he's done. He's just gone in there with an agenda to make sure that the Doctor is as diverse as possible at any cost, to the integrity of the show, the integrity of the character of the Doctor, to the intelligence of the viewing public who are watching this going, the fuck? And there are people who are fans of the current era who've said to me that, you know, they love Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. They've enjoyed the episodes up until that Timeless Child retcon. That was when they were like, oh, no. So even some of them...
Long? It took them that long?
I know, right? Bless them. What can you do? No accounting for taste. But hey, that's the way it is. But, you know, bless them. Glad you enjoy it, whatever. Yeah. It makes us fucking miserable. If you don't have empathy for that, I'm sorry, you're not human. You know, think about it. People are really, really upset. People who've been watching this their entire lives cannot get to grips with this because it fundamentally undermines the character. They don't get it because they've hopped on 5 minutes ago and think they know everything. Because they've watched a few classic stories or they've watched all of it or whether they think they've got it. No, you can't binge watch Doctor Who and suddenly you've got the whole experience. Because when you grow up, like when I did from the late 70s through the 80s, through the 90s when there wasn't any Doctor Who apart from the film, and still supporting it, still going out and buying things Doctor Who, and it's still, you know, loving it as much as I did, and going through the heartache of not having it for 16 years, and then celebrating its return, and then the whole thing going off again, and then to be told you don't know anything. You know, it's like, wow, could you be slightly more insulting to me, please? Because, you know, you will never, ever, ever understand what it's like to grow up in the 70s and 80s, loving Doctor Who, especially going to school and loving Doctor Who in the 80s. You were an outcast. You were bullied to fuck for loving Doctor Who. I went to school dressed as Sylvester McCoy once in a summer school fete. That didn't go down too well, but I did it. And I was proud to do it. And that is what it takes. You know, that's when you really have given yourself over to this show, which during my time at school was horrible, but it was my lifeline. It was my escape. It was my it was something I was willing to be beaten up for, you know. And now I'm going through it again because I'm being told that I should go and kill myself for not liking Jodie Whittaker. Seriously? For not liking the terrible writing of Chris Chibnall? Are you fucking crazy? Yes, you are. That's the short answer. Yes, you are. You're fucking crazy.
Just one more tiny detail about the article before we move on to the Jodie stuff.
Please do.
The last two pieces of the article had to do with the changing backstories of the Daleks and the Cybermen. And I'm like, I know that the Daleks started out one way, and then when showrunners changed, it was something else, and then it went to Davros, and you know. But overall, you're forgetting one very important factor. This is a show about a transdimensional time traveler. And at the time, before the Time War, let's not forget, as Ten was so fond of saying, when the Time Lords were still alive, they could pop in and out of different alternate worlds, maybe back home in time for tea. It's not above the pale to believe that at some point they encounter different versions of Daleks from alternate dimensions or universes or whatnot. It doesn't make it confusing. It's a sci-fi show. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about science fiction, I mean, it's more science fantasy, I'd say, than science fiction, but it's it does have that. It does have that, and I think Chibnall thinks because he gets that he can do whatever he wants. He's a caretaker. Okay, he is in charge of a 57-year-old franchise that's been around since before he was born, since before most of us were born. He's going to be there for 4 or 5 years. He's got his so-called 5-year plan. Not much of a bloody plan, but anyway.
Good luck with that. I wouldn't be surprised
to destroy it for the sake of intersectionalism and postmodernist crazy ideas from a couple of crazy French philosophers from the 60s. Okay, whatever. So he's doing that, but he hasn't got any sort of real creativity. He's hired beneath him. He's hired people who are less talented than he is, and he is not talented. He had a fluke go with some depressing drama I didn't watch. Great, he was a success, whatever. That does not make you qualified to write for Doctor Who. Hiring political playwrights and poets and Emmerdale Farm bloody soap opera writers and making the characters in Doctor Who sit in a cafe talking about their lives for far too long does not make for interesting science fiction. You got monsters who appear and you think, oh, the villain. No, they're not the villain. The main villain is you, or usually the evil white guy or Trump guy or the racist guy or it's so cardboard cutout. I mean, they make these characters more one-dimensional than any of the bug-eyed monsters from the 1960s. How do you manage to do that? With all the wonder of whiz-bang technology and making everything look fabulous, you're still sacrificing those developments and ideas for big explosions and running around the corridors, which he criticized Pip and Jane Baker for back in the 80s when he was a 19-year-old twat. And
the overall point is, though, that the differences between show runners before Chibnall was minimal, although
the showrunner was the editor.
Often has his issues.
The script editor was the showrunner, effectively. It was a marriage of the script editor and the executive producer. Now they've got it in sort of one. He has far too much power.
But what they did was they continued to add on and move forward and grow the universe outward. Whereas what Chibnall is doing, it's like a Jenga tower.
It's a navel gazing.
He's pulling the last block out from the bottom and causing the entire tower to fall.
He's created a Mobius strip. He's looked so far deep into his own navel, his head's gone through it. And I think that he's more concerned about creating his legacy from this deluded, deranged concept he had as a kid to be realized, like his major Doctor Who wet dream. And we've all had to suffer and endure bad fan fiction and pay for the privilege of it, and it's like such arrogance, such utter arrogance. It is hubris. There's no other word for it. And I don't just entirely blame him. I blame Piers Wenger, whatever his name is, Piers Wanger as I call him, who is clearly the big postmodernist shill working for common purpose within the BBC, as far as I suspect. I can't prove it, but I suspect he is. And he's the organ grinder and Chibnall is the monkey. So I don't really know how much input Chibnall actually has. I don't think he's that competent or that interested, honestly enough. I think he had the vague idea of what he wanted to do as a kid. Wenger's gone, yeah, here's a blank check, off you go. And that was it. They let him run loose and he can't handle it. He's so out of his depth. But I think the drivers behind him are the ones sort of shaping his plan. But I think the people like Doctor Who magazine are part of this. I think they, ever since that new Time team came in, the all under 30s who know bugger all, have come in. I think they are probably common purpose inserts as well. using it as a propaganda. They'll do anything to prop this current era up. They're quite happy to watch us tear ourselves apart and not say a word. People are getting death threats and they're loving it.
The sad thing is when the BBC and Chibnall approve a teeny little villain that runs around a space station chomping on things, and they give it the name that corresponds to the sound that your phone makes when a Twitter message comes through.
Mm-hmm.
The bating in the Saranga conundrum.
Mm-hmm.
You've hit rock bottom.
I mean, that character we've seen before. We've seen it in Futurama. We've seen it in other things. Even the Gremlins. I mean, it's such a rip. Look, Chibnall. We all know Chibnall has not got an original bone in his body, which makes his defenders seem all the more disingenuous. They know it's shit. They've got to know. The only reason they are supporting this era is because it upholds their crazy philosophy. It's the only reason. The only reason they like Jodie is because, yes, it's a woman. Not for any other reason.
I'm actually surprised that Disney didn't sue him for copyright infringement, because the thing looks and acts just like fucking Stitch.
Again, exactly. It's such a generic trope creature now. It's become a trope. This monster, this tiny little comical monster that just consumes everything.
That's why every time someone tries to sing his praises about how he's written such wonderful new stories, all I gotta do is just flash him that video of him when he was 18 years old on that talk show going, oh, it's just cut and dry Doctor Who running down corridors and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, excuse me, what was the Saranga film about? Running down corridors?
I mean...
what the fuck?
I'm so glad that that's around to haunt him. Apparently he apologized to Pip and Jane Baker later on, but I don't believe that's a genuine apology. I seriously don't. I think if he's that bloody minded, then he's that bloody minded now. I think it was a very... I mean, he back then, I suppose he's pretty much like fandom is now, not ever bloody happy with anything. And I think that's pretty true. I mean, I will be honest and say, yeah, we've had our problems with Doctor Who. I certainly have since the 80s, when Sylvester's run, Colin Baker's run, it was always very, very hard to get through. But I was quite young at the time, so I just went along with it. But when I was at high school, when Sylvester was on, we were a lot more critical. I think it was getting better when they cancelled it. The BBC were dead against it, wanted it cancelled. Now we have the exact opposite. It's getting worse, but the BBC are loving it. I mean, what kind of upside down world have we entered? It's very weird. I mean, it's so antithetical, I think, to how Doctor Who should be. It should be for everyone. And yet here we are being told to leave, in no uncertain terms. They don't even hide it anymore. I mean, look at the Doctor Who magazine. They knew that cover would be so divisive. They love it. They love the fact that they're trying to get rid of us old fogies because, they're the young, hip, trendy, intersectionalism. Yeah, we're so radical and we're going to change the world. Like, it's... No,
honestly, the whole idea about, other than the fact that the Time Lord Cyberman looked fucking ridiculous. The fact that he even did
it's a disco fucking Cyberman. Disco. So, I expected him to sort of break out into doing YMCA. It was so
for someone
ludicrous.
who claims to have been a fan for as long as he's claimed to be and knows so much about the lore, he's forgetting one very important thing when it comes to Time Lord biology.
You have to be alive to regenerate.
Yes. So when they become Cybermen, their bodies are chopped up. There's nothing of them left. It's only certain parts of the brain. But even those parts of the brain are subsumed by whatever the Cybermen do to make you. There's a specific part of the Gallifreyan brain that they have to utilize in order to tell their body to rewrite itself. That's why they have the ability to decide whether or not they want to regenerate, like what the Master did in season 3. He specifically decided that he wasn't going to do it just to just to piss off the Doctor because he didn't want the Doctor to win.
Yeah.
But the point is, they have to have control of that part of their brain in order for it to work. If their brain has been chopped up into mush and been put into a cyber suit, they no longer have control over that, which means they can't do anything.
No, exactly. Yeah, again, Chibnall hasn't a clue. I'm beginning to doubt if he was ever a fan. I mean, at this rate, it seems unconscionable to me that he could have any love for this era, or any love for Doctor Who at all, to be so careless and so vandalistic, if that's a word. It is now. I mean, he went so far as to destroy Gallifrey again. After just after
everything that the Doctor went through to get it back,
right?
I mean, I know that
just so he could,
great,
just so he could get his timeless child fantasy thing in there. He went ahead and did. I mean, did you really have to do that?
I mean, I know that the Hellbent wasn't great. We all know that it was kind of shit. But Heaven Sent was a fucking masterpiece.
Oh, it was, yeah, absolutely.
What he went through to break down that diamond wall to get back there. Not just him as 12, but what 11 went through and 10, and all of them together. All that shared suffering that they went through to get that planet back. For what?
And then the Master learns of a secret. How? And then destroys Gallifrey. How?
By himself?
I mean, yeah. I mean, okay. So why didn't the Master just destroy Gallifrey anyway if he could? And then take all the fucking technology, convert Cybermen into Time Lords, and then do it right from the beginning? Why didn't he just do that? Why didn't he just do that?
An entire fully powered Dalek horde couldn't get through the Time Lord Sky Trench.
One Time Lord managed to do it.
Yeah. How the fuck is he by himself going to take out the entire Time Lord race and destroy the planet?
And that whole lone Cyberman thing was just a fucking tool. It was just created as an interesting character when he's first introduced. I didn't watch it, so I'm only going by what I've been told, to be honest. But he was sacked. I did watch The Timeless Child, and I swear to God, that's the last time I allow myself to be put through this. He sacrificed that character. It was purely a plot device. And this is what Chibnall does. He picks characters out of nowhere, like that girl in that one with the what was it? I can't even remember. They're just so boring and bland. The story where it's set in ancient Babylon.
There's an easy way that they can fix this, and it's already been established.
But they pick up these characters, they serve their purpose, and then you don't know what happens to them afterwards. There's none of that. They're just dispensed with.
There's a way that they can fix this, though, because in the Deadly Assassin and Trial of the Time Lord, back during Tom Baker's era, they tried to make it. The Master tried to make it look that Fourth Doctor was going to assassinate the president. But he did that by going into the Matrix and fucking around in the Matrix and creating this illusion out of what was already there. If it's already been established that the Master has that kind of ability to do that, wouldn't it stand to reason that he's probably doing the same thing now and fucking around?
The Master. I mean, the one thing that they keep deferring to and that they keep deflecting from, and it's very, I can see what they're doing. They say, "Oh, the Doctor lies." They keep saying, "Oh yeah, but remember, the Doctor always lies. The Doctor lies. Oh, the Doctor." Excuse me, the Master always fucking lies. Have we forgotten this? I mean, they're so quick to keep saying the Doctor lies. The Doctor lies. It's like, why are you doing that? I can see why you're doing that, because you want to deflect from the fact that the Master is the least trustworthy person to take that information and just go with it. I mean, if he can destroy Gallifrey, could he not have quite easily then have manipulated the Doctor into believing this bullshit cock and bull story? I mean, does that not cross anyone's? Why the Doctor just takes what he says? I said cosplay Doctor, really.
I would
takes
honestly
what he says for his word. Really?
I would honestly be more inclined to believe that once the 12th Doctor got there, and however it was he managed to, put them in the pocket. Okay, he got them out the time lock, put them into a pocket universe, right? And then he had to go and find them and pull them out of the pocket universe and bring them back into the prime.
Yeah,
universe.
how did it find Gallifrey in the first place?
But that's what 12 did, right? He pulled them out of the pocket universe and brought them back into the prime.
Yeah, but how did the Master know all this? I mean, why is why is the Master even totally different to Missy? What's going on? None of this is satisfactory. I'm sorry.
I would be more inclined to believe that
He's a pre-Missy Master.
left at the end of Hellbent, and they had finally been brought back into the prime, that so much had changed for Gallifrey since the Time War. Literally all that this planet had known and the war went on for what, thousands of years, millions of years, because time at that point had been used literally as a weapon. They knew nothing but their whole planet had been ravaged. And so when the 12th Doctor told them to stop, that Rassilon had become not just corrupted but insane, and that he was wrong for what he was trying to do, it would not surprise me if after he left that the entire planet split up into factions, those that supported Rassilon and those that didn't. And if you want an explanation as to why when 13 comes back the planet is ravaged, I think the Master found it ravaged because they fought each other. I think the Gallifreyans went to civil war against each other because they didn't, after having just come out of that Time War, they didn't know what else to do. Like they've been trapped for so long, and then they come back and all they know is war, but their enemy is gone, and now they're not sure which side they need to follow, Rassilon or.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, if you look at the history of the Daleks, they were in a perpetual war, and look what happened to them. The same could have happened on Gallifrey. Listen, what you've just said in the last minute and a half makes more bloody sense to me than anything Chibnall's come up with in 2 series. I mean, that is creative. That's a really interesting idea. Why that couldn't be expounded upon, maybe that's what he has in mind. I don't know. I don't know if he's got anything in mind, quite honestly. But I think that relying on the Master solely as the narrator of the Doctor's history, that he's the one to unveil this. Why? Why would he care? Why would he care? I'm still
trying to figure out how the Master's even there in the first place. I didn't watch a whole lot of. I didn't watch season 10 at all. I'm halfway through season 9, so I don't know a whole lot of the ending of Misty. I wish I had watched the episode where John Sim came back. John Sim's my favorite.
I have to say, for all the flaws of the latter Moffat era, especially the horrible mismanagement of Capaldi's Doctor, that story, Wild Enough in Time, is a masterpiece. It's brilliant. I mean, the following, the finale was pants, but
yeah, because they shit all over.
Well, he could never deliver. He's great at building up and doing the setup, but the payoff always falls below par because the build-up is too much. But it was a great story, that part. But the scenes between Missy and Capaldi's Doctor at the end was very good. And her scenes with John Sim's Master was very good. The bit where they face off each other. If you haven't watched it, I would advise you just to watch that bit because that is brilliant.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. So John Sim's Master, who is an incarnation before Missy, kills Missy, right?
Yep.
Okay. So.
And she dies. He makes sure that she's not gonna have enough energy or life force to regenerate. So that's the end. And then what does he do? What does Chibnall do? Brings the Master back immediatI
did she not have enough energy? Was there something?
It was a mortal shot. I mean, he used his sonic laser. He said it to kill, not stun or anything like that. It was a fatal blow.
So it's kind of like the equivalent of a Dalek blast, which is the only thing that can kill a Time Lord dead.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it was a fatal blow, and within after one season he brings the Doctor back. Seriously, I mean, whose story arc at that point?
So now you don't even know. You don't even know at what point in his regeneration cycle this Master's from. Is it a past Master?
I mean, I'm trying to think. This has got to be a pre-Missy Master,
But they can't fuck with that. If they do, they're going to be fucking with everything John Sim did when he was. Oh my god.
Who knows? Who fucking knows? I mean, it's such a convoluted mess. Now, the problem is Moffat himself created a lot of these problems. He made so many complicated knots. There's a Gordian knot stuff going on in there. And he left so many loose ends and then claimed, oh, it's for us to use our imagination. It's like, not good enough. I'm sorry. You write yourself into a corner. You bloody well write yourself out of it. Don't, it's not a case of us being lazy. It's a case of you're the one who's being lazy and you're blaming us to not pick up the shortfall here. And Chibnall doesn't even have that level of complication and he still muddles it up. I cannot understand how someone who's created a very serialized first series where it was pretty much standalone episodes and then tries to set up this timeless. I mean, all the only sort of prescient thing in the series 11 was this wispy scarf thing flying around going, beware the timeless child. It's like, well, okay, and then we forget about it, and then all of a sudden it's the big arc. Yeah, the big arc that never gets addressed until like 5 episodes in, hints at it, and then at the end. Yeah, it's not an arc. It's not like Bad Wolf where you've got every episode you've got something hinting at this thing coming.
You know why Russell was genius? Because from start to end, everything he did in his little plot arcs, everything from the moment that the show started with Rose until he finished in End of Time, everything bled into each other. Every season corresponded to the next. Every plot point made sense, and it fed into ultimately what happened with Stolen Earth.
And this is a guy who was writing 3 series on the trot, 3 things going on at once, and he still managed to balance it out and still managed to make it work within the universe.
He started
People can't even do it with 10 episodes, He
started with Bad Wolf. At that point, Torchwood was just kind of a anomalous thing. And then, in season 2, the Doctor and Rose's arrogance about not, how's it said, don't piss where you eat.
Yeah,
they weren't careful enough. They kind of got arrogant.
Well, Chibnall's defecated where he eats now, and it's where we eat, and it's
that
not
caused
palatable.
Torchwood to be a thing, and then because of that is what led to the him losing Rose at the end of season 2, because Torchwood started playing around with things that they shouldn't have been playing with. But those Daleks being there, that wasn't just a thing that just happened and then disappeared. The Cult of Skaro stayed. You saw them again in season 3. And then 3 of them died. 1 was left. He did an emergency temporal shift, wound up in the Time War, and that started the whole storyline for Stolen Earth. Season 4 had that arc literally started way back towards the end of season 1 and bled through perfectly. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't hard to understand. It was just nuanced enough to be fucking brilliant. And the way you knew that there was something going on in season 4 was because you kept seeing Rose pop up in little places. She was in Partners in Crime, and then she was in Poison Sky, and then she was in Midnight. Just little tiny bits, but it kept that plot thread going.
Yeah.
Whereas with Chibnall, he'll start one thing and throw it out there, and then it'll disappear. Like the dyspraxia with Ryan, mentioned one time in the first episode, and then
now he's an excellent shot and can throw a basketball. I mean, if that isn't tokenistic and racialist stereotyping, I don't know what is. I mean, as someone who has dyspraxia, it's not something you just overcome. It can take you by bloody surprise. Okay, you're constantly clumsy, constantly breaking things. You're all quite unsteady at times, and it's something that plays up. and it's never really mentioned, it's never touched on it, and it was just so superficial. And I think that word exemplifies the Chibnall era. It's superficial, it's cynical, it's superficial, it's tokenistic, it's pandering. It doesn't believe in its message. It's just trying to be on point with the current mode of youth think, which is handed to them by their university professors like it was Soma, from Brave New World.
That's why that is a great word. That's the word I would use to describe the three companions in the Chibnall. Well, not Graham totally. Graham is the only decent one they have there.
Well, he was until they made him the butt of every joke.
Right, and that's
and they made him the one to praise and validate Yaz all the time.
That's basically playing.
His job is there. His job is to be the old middle-aged white guy who praises and validates and affirms the greatness of Yaz and Ryan,
and who you can laugh at when he screws up because he's old.
Yeah.
When he had the trouble getting
because ageism is acceptable.
Cyberman helmet
under the millennial. Yeah, ageism is acceptable in the age of the I can't even say millennial supremacists.
But it doesn't surprise me that they would play him up for humor because isn't Bradley Walsh like a well-known comic over there?
Well, he's a comic actor, stroke TV show presenter, really. But he used to do a lot of pantomime stuff, but he can do he can do serious stuff. He's a very good actor, actually. I think he's a very, very good actor, and he's always a bit of a clown. He's a funny guy. He's a funny guy. So
they're playing to what his strengths are by making him the butt of the joke and giving him all the humorous lines and whatever.
Yeah, his best lines were in series 11. But I think his character was so much more in depth. He was the only well-written character out of the entire series 11.
Yes, and Ryan don't do anything. And what pisses me off more than anything is that they completely go along with whatever she says.
It's because he doesn't know how to write. Because Chibnall is so racist. He cannot write people of color. I hate using that term. I know.
If they call anything she does into question, they're misogynist and they hate her because she's a woman.
Yeah, he writes on such a one-track mind, where he's on like some kind of apologist tour for white people, and it's embarrassing. And it's like he's condescending to write for these characters, and I think he holds back because I think he's absolutely terrified in writing them too much because he doesn't want to get it wrong. So he doesn't want to be exposed for his lack of, for his actual embedded racism.
One of the reasons why some of the Doctor's best companions were the best, like Ian, Barbara, Jamie, Sarah Jane, Joe Grant, Romana, Rose, Martha, Donna, was because they weren't afraid to call him on his shit and tell him when he was wrong. That's what made them strong, because they knew that just because he was a Time Lord didn't mean that he was God and that he was infallible.
And if you look at Jodie, if you look at Jodie's Doctor, right, this cosplay thing, it's not the Doctor. She has fucked up on scales that are unbelievable. She got the entire human race killed, and then she left the remaining human race living in the 21st century with no identity, no ID, no money, nowhere to live. They're just fucked off. Yeah.
Which episode was this?
This is the timeless. No, not the timeless. Was it the timeless child or the one before? I don't know. Whatever. But this is the thing.
Wait. Those people that she was helping that were fighting against the Cybermen, wasn't that in the future on another planet?
Yeah, but that's the last bastion
of human race.
Yeah, and then she gets most of them all bloody killed, and then she brings them back, the survivors, back to the 21st century, thus ending the human race in that time. So because they've now gone back in time, what happens with them? Who cares, right? It's just so many fucking things that he has just allowed to happen without fully understanding what that actually means.
You know,
and it makes her look absolutely stupid.
It was funny. You know, it's funny in that scene where because there's three TARDISes. There's the Doctor's TARDIS. There's the one that's the tree that she escaped in before the Jadoon grabbed her, and then there's the one that's the house.
Oh, well, the one where she made her cowardly run away and let that old white dude take the
one that she allows them to escape in, Yaz and Ryan and Graham and the remaining humans.
How did they pilot it?
I have no idea, because no one can except for a Time Lord.
Did she set it? I don't remember. She might have
programmed. It's possible that she might have programmed emergency program 1, which is literally the only way that would work. Because don't forget, Rassilon and Premature, only a Time Lord can, pilot a TARDIS, because they have to.
Unless you're River Song, who can just magically fly a TARDIS. Yeah.
Exactly. Unless you're River Song and can just magically do it. Yeah. Even Jack, as well skilled as he is with different ships, couldn't really pilot it. He could press the buttons really fucking good, but he couldn't, because it has to be telepathically connected to a Time Lord. And last I checked, River Song is not telepathic. Just saying. But anyway, so they're now left on planet Earth in a TARDIS that looks like a house.
Yep.
The most fucked up thing was after they walked out of the TARDIS and onto the street, the ones that were from the future were just kind of looking around like, oh, wow, this is cool. And then her companions, they're not even sure if she's dead or alive. They may never see her again. And they're just like, okay. And they walk away. I'm like,
yeah, great character development, kids. Nice one. Well done.
Are you for real? When 11 was shot in front of Rory and Amy and River on that beach, they lost their shit. Because he was killed, supposedly, not really because of Relva, whatever, Moffat, right in front of them. And Amy she lost her fucking mind.
Yeah.
They're saying that these three are saying they would follow her to the depths of hell and that she's the best person they've ever known, but they don't know if she's alive or dead. Oh, well.
So yeah, let's just pay lip service and be, that's, again, superficial. Eastland Bergholder in the chat says, I keep saying that brown and bisexual, black and gay is not character development and does not make for an interesting character until the writer makes it so. Graham was well written, but they made him the butt of every joke. Exactly. I mean, this is what pandering to this current era of philosophy does. It boils everything down to the bare bones of race, gender, sexuality. You're a woman, I'm a gay man, and we're supposed to be the type of person that is supposed to be loving this era. We don't. Because
good segue. Now we can get into the Jodie stuff, which was the meat of this argument. Okay. I know that at this point I'm probably going to start getting flamed up. That just tells you how old I am by saying the word flame, because I've been on the internet for a long time, by the Jodie bots, but whatever. I am a female. You are gay. Just because she's a woman doesn't mean I have to like her. And if you
that's your internalized misogyny. Apparently.
And if you think that the majority of the females in the Who fan base, of which there is actually quite a few, a lot more than guys tend to think that she's the best representation of the Doctor, you got another thing coming. I just love what Gary and Az were saying. They actually mentioned this, and they were saying that most of the women really do not like her portrayal as the Doctor, because we were perfectly fine before that with our male Doctor fantasy. I was perfectly happy with my David Tennant male Doctor fantasy right here. I'm good.
I think they miss. I mean, not only did they not write her to be remotely feminine, they wrote her as a male. They wrote the Doctor as a male. I mean, Chibnall has written her as a male. There are no feminine attributes. It's not even addressed, very superficially, again, by other characters. And she takes great delight
it's even down to her clothing choices.
Yeah,
It's
it's
purposely as androgynous as possible, so that they won't have to address it.
Because gender's just a construct, right? Gender's just a construct.
You know, that's exactly what happened with Colin Baker when he, you know, looked like a circus tent threw up on him with that suit. But the sad thing was that Colin had only suggested that as a joke. And for some reason, somebody who was show running at that time decided to go along with it and use that as I don't even know, but it was never supposed to be the actual doctor's outfit. And I honestly believe that his portrayal as the doctor was hampered by the fact that no one could get over what the hell he was wearing. But her, I mean, it's so bland and like, just, there's nothing that identifies her as the doctor. You're saying that you want her to be seen as a female. Dress her as a goddamn woman then. I'm not saying she's got to have a skirt and
now, are you with me on this? When I say, when Missy came out of the TARDIS, in Well Enough in Time, I don't know if you saw that bit, but she came out of the TARDIS and said, "Hello, I'm Doctor Who." And immediately I was sold. I was like, yep, if you were the Doctor, I could well believe that. And she would have been great.
She had that Victorian dress outfit.
Yeah.
On. If that was them dipping their toe in and kind of testing the waters to see if it would work, well, you did good, because Michelle Gomez was fucking fantastic. And she was instantly believable as the master as a woman. So right there, you know it can be done. But that's done right, with not because she's a woman, not because Michelle Gomez,
casting.
Because of great casting, and because she's got the writing to back it the fuck up.
You preach, sister. Yeah, I mean,
writing. I mean, I'm not okay. Before the J-bots get all pissy at me, I have no issue with Jodie herself. I don't know a lot about her. I don't know a lot about Chivs, because I'm not from the UK, so I don't get the chance to watch a lot of it. I
don't even care at this point. I see what they're doing to my beloved show, and they know what they're doing. I have my issues.
I have seen her in Broadchurch. I know what she's capable of. She's a good actress in that type of show. Dramas and stuff. That is her wheelhouse. I've always said, and I believe it firmly, that good actors should be able to have a range of different genres that they're capable of playing in. But this is not to say that every actor is capable of supporting every genre. And the example I gave in an earlier video was Ben Affleck. When Ben Affleck did the late 90s, early 2000s Daredevil movie, it sunk. And it wasn't just because the movie itself was bad. It was. But the major reason it was bad was because Ben Affleck could not play a superhero. He's just one of those actors that it just didn't work. Some actors just cannot carry sci-fi fantasy as a draw. It just doesn't work. Even when he plays Batman, doesn't work for me. I would rather have seen Christian Bale play Batman in the Batman versus Superman. I think he would have done a better job.
Or Michael Keaton.
Right. Some actors just can't pull it off. Jodie is one of them. I'm not saying that she's bad. Broadchurch was phenomenally good. At least the first 2 seasons of it was, anyway. The third, I don't even know why they did a third. I guess it's
not something that appeals to me. Not something that appeals to me. I never watched it.
But I mean, it was very well done. The problem is that Chibnall is trying to write Doctor Who like he wrote Broadchurch. Doctor Who is not fucking Broadchurch. This is what happens when you go, oh, well, I worked with you on that show, so why don't you come in and work on this show now too? Just because it worked great in that show doesn't mean it's going to work on this show.
Well, I think she was his second choice, wasn't it? I think he wanted Olivia Colman. Thankfully, she said no. I think that's the rumor. I can't.
Olivia Colman, I think, could have pulled it off. She was next to David. She was one of the best things about Broadchurch. So I think she definitely could have pulled it off.
Well, I think we'll never know now. I think that this is the point. We'll never know. I mean, my personal concept for a female doctor would have gone like this. in the episode, The Doctor Falls, when Missy says goodbye to Capaldi's doctor, she grabs his hand and she looks down and then looks up at him and leaves. I think that could have been her passing him on something, like a fob watch, right? So she goes off knowing that she's probably going to die, defeating herself in the woods by this lift to stop the Master, to stop her former self, because she's reformed, right? The Doctor's got into her head.
Not for long.
Not for long. Yeah. What? Missy who?
No,
which again
I mean,
is derogatory to her character development, by the way. You know.
No, I'm talking about what happened with John Sim. As soon as she met her past self, she immediately just remembered why she was supposed to hate him so much.
Well, I think what could have happened then is that she wouldn't regenerate. She knew that he would try and kill her. So therefore, she put her regeneration energy into the fob watch that she would have given him. So knowing that she was never going to make it, and that the Doctor might himself fall because the situation was so dire with the Cybermen that he would not come out of this. And this was her parting gift to him, that should he get that fatal blow and not regenerate, that he will have her energy to do it. And that when he got a fatal blow, let's say, he would open the fob watch and out would flow her energy into him. Now, it could have either turned the Doctor into just any other woman and like another actress, not Jodie Whittaker, or into Michelle Gomez. So it would have been like the Doctor and Master in one body.
Oh, that would have been cool.
And that would have been interesting, and the humor, the situation itself would have been interesting in a sort of story wise, to at least give a reason for the Doctor's change of gender, to put the situation where he's also the Master in a way, you know, or elements of that. So you could have had a series based on that and really played on that and made it interesting.
But now
what Chibnall did is just made it boring, and it's like, and she's like, oh, brilliant, that's it, that's the only acknowledgement of the change. Oh, brilliant, that's it.
Now we have Sacha Dhawan's Master, who you can't even figure out how he's meant to be there in the first.
He is so over the top. I mean, he makes Missy and Eric Roberts look absolutely
and I know
underplayed.
I know that people will say, well, John Sims' version was crazy buggers too.
I didn't like Sims' Master. I didn't like Sims particularly. I didn't like his portrayal.
But there was purpose behind him being crazy buggers, because he had that sound of drums in his brain his entire life.
That's a retcon I also had issues with as well. But again, this is my New Who era kind of problems that I've put up with.
There was always reasons behind it, because he's been influenced by the Time Lords his entire life. He was full of anger and bitterness and rage, and it turned him kind of crazy buggers, but not so much over the top like how Dhawan did it. I'm not saying that Sacha is a bad actor at all.
I think Sacha, not at all. He's great. I think he would have been better as the Doctor. That's what I'm saying. I think he would have played that.
Started on the outfit they had him wearing the time with children. Holy Christ, oh my God.
Well, it's kind of like a mixture of Missy's outfit and 13's outfit, isn't it? It's like, the half-length, quarter-length trousers thing going on. And sort of homage to sort of the 11th Doctor outfit. It's like, we've seen this before. But his mania is a bit... it's so camp. It's so camp. It's so fucking camp and over the top. It's
the
silly.
Outfit looks like what Heath Ledger would have worn as the Joker if he was colorblind.
Yeah, it's the orange and purple thing. Yeah,
I'm like,
I mean, it's not the worst outfit. I prefer the Master in black. I'm a traditionalist in that sense. The purple with Missy, that's fine. Purple is like the color of death. So I mean that's and royalty. So making the Timeless Child the Master would have made more sense, if you think about it.
Now the issues with Jodie once again, so the Jodie bots won't kill me. I do not have anything against her personally. If you like this era, more power to you. Have fun. But the problem is that when you take on this role, you're not just playing a character. You're taking on everything that has come before. This is not just a character. This is a state of being that you have to embrace. So when you do your first episode, you need to establish yourself as the Doctor from the jump. And if you can't do that, then none of those fans, even the new ones, are going to give you any credit.
To be fair to her, Chibnall didn't write her strong enough.
I know it's not all on her. She's working with what she
was told to read. She was told to read the script. That was what she was told. She was told, don't do your research, do your own take, and she did it. As a diligent actor, any diligent actor with a sort of bugger that, I'm going to do my research.
Especially in a show
Every
like
doctor
this, a character like this. I mean, holy Christ! Look, I know that you're trying to do what the showrunner tells you, but if you're a decent actress and you want to be as professional as possible, when you have a role like this with that much history and background, don't you think it would behoove you to say screw that? And at least
Pertwee and Baker didn't put up with any shit, right? Especially Baker. If he wasn't happy with something, he had people leaping through hoops to change things on his bequest. You know, his behest. He would not put up with lousy writing, and he would absolutely stand up for what he believed in. He may have been a tyrant, but he certainly did have some great ideas. And I think that shows in the final stories. Not always. But I think he was always acutely aware of a good story and a bad story. And he had a lot of run-ins with directors, but he stood his ground, and I give him his dues. He didn't suffer fools gladly. Whittaker is enthralled to Chibnall for everything that he's done for her in the past, but he's actively now destroyed her career, I'd say, unless
for the fact that she stood back and not taken it upon herself.
She should have taken the initiative to...
I'm not saying that she had to go and watch everything, maybe just a couple episodes each Doctor, just so you have a much better feel of what the character is, especially when you know for a fact, as we do, that she apparently did not have Doctor Who growing up in her house. She was not a fan.
No, and the other thing,
either, but
he did his research, and he fell in love with the Second Doctor, and his Doctor was a bit of a homage to the Second Doctor. So he learned to love it. I think, didn't he write a story himself? So he became a fan. She's not a fan. She will never be. She can't even name the special of her own show, right? She called it Revolution of the Dalek. You know, it's like, oh, for goodness sake. She doesn't care. It's a job for her.
About that interview was when the interviewer asked if you could pick any character from the past to bring back onto the show, who would you pick? And David and Matt had some really great choices.
Yeah, Tennant was like the Brigadier. Matt was, was it?
Billy, I think, because he and Billy are really good friends.
Yeah, Rose Tyler.
And she says Grace because she doesn't know any other characters outside of her own era.
I know.
And it's
so obvious. She does not care. And when I see people on Twitter saying, oh, she's such a wonderful ambassador for the show, she doesn't do anything. She doesn't go anywhere. She's not a Met fan. She's not gone to any Comic Cons. Apart from the first one when she was announced. That was the only time you've seen her interact with anyone. Other than, like, you know, maybe the Children in Need thing where they wheel out this girl or whatever to fawn over her, like the one that they could find or pay.
All she does is shit on fans for not liking her.
She's done that. She did that right from the word. I mean, if you're going to endear yourself to the fandom, the one thing you do not do when you're faced with criticism for your casting, which I'm sure other doctors experience too, is humiliate them in a video online forever, right? The other thing is as well, you don't say that the entirety of the history of the classic era was problematic due to its because it was just there for the straight white male gaze.
So she's saying if I don't like her, that means that I'm a misogynist. So are you saying I hate myself?
Yeah, you have internalized misogyny.
No, I really don't. I just don't like you because you suck at this character. And I know that you haven't.
She's a one-note. She's a one-note character. She's not a character actor. That's the problem. All the doctors have been character actors. She is a stage actress. She's a
except for
bit part character. She's not a character actor. Character actors are people who often get cast as not the leading role, but as someone who is a villain, or someone who is the comic relief, or someone who is a side character who either dons a costume or something. You know, they're like the standout kind of not lead characters, right? The lead roles, not lead roles. And they become the lead role because the Doctor is a character. She is a serious actor type who doesn't embody the role of the Doctor because she's never had to play that kind of character before. She's always sort of, it's hard to explain, but she's adopted a role unsuited to her particular acting skills.
Miscast from the jump.
It's not in her palette. It's not in her. She's not someone who sits at home and flips on Doctor Who. All right, she's not the type
in her wheelhouse. She doesn't have the respect for it. Even the actors who didn't come from a place of having been fans in the past still had the respect for how long the show has been in the culture and how much it means.
She's oblivious.
To the country.
It's clear that she's oblivious. And it's amazing how these people will tie themselves in knots, in absolute knots, to defend this. I can't help but laugh. I mean, it's so ridiculous how far they go to defend her, purely on the dint of what is or is not between her legs.
The unfortunate thing is that Chibnall doesn't do her any favors. The way
he doesn't.
The way they film her on screen with the scrunch faces and up her nose shots and the dialogue that they give her,
it's cringe.
The way she reacts to characters with a non-reaction, like she doesn't know.
The Doctor is an alien. What on earth is she doing? Going e-by-ek and all that, fam. I mean, like, really? I mean, come on. At least the Doctor, when it was in the classic era, had a received pronunciation, a Middle English. It was a generic English. It wasn't regional. Okay, the Doctor has Gallifrey as a North as Eccleston's Doctor. I can buy into that. That's what. But when you really egg it on and it becomes so completely colloquial, right? It's particular to a particular place within, wherever geography. Okay, in a particular place. It's very, very, very small. It's a very small part of our United Kingdom, and very kind of excludes almost everyone else. It's so localized, and I think I don't know how Americans respond to that. I'd be interested.
Well, here they generally don't care because they're ignorant enough to.
But that accent is just so annoying.
That one accent sounds the same as the next. But I've watched enough British TV over my decades-long life that I know the differences between Northern and Scouse and Welsh and Scottish, so
yeah.
But I also know that when Eccleston did that, when they had that little humorous, well, all planets have a north, that was a one and done deal. One reference joke, that's it. And they never.
And now apparently Gallifrey has Africa, Asia. Isn't it funny how? I mean, fair enough. Why not? I mean, you could have an equivalent of many different races on another planet. Of course, you can.
And that was part of the biggest reason that Eccleston took on the role in the first place, because he wanted to prove that just because he had a Northern accent didn't mean that he could be taken seriously as this character, and he was from the jump. The accent was never an issue. It was a one-off little joke, and that was it. They never even said anything about Capaldi.
But you didn't see him running around going bygone or or putting.
They never said anything about Capaldi being Scottish, but then again, he's not the first Scottish actor to.
But he did. They did in the first. I'm Scottish. I got angry. I'm Scottish. I want to. Does that mean I have to punch someone? Yeah, I mean.
Again, though, it was a one and done thing, and that was it. They never really.
I mean, I understand about being inclusive. I get all that, but to the exclusion of everything else, you know. I mean, okay. When I was a kid growing up, everything on the TV did not have regional accents. That was just the way it was. And that changed over a period of time. It became more inclusive and more regional, and that's fine. And great, you know, it's important. But I don't know, for a character like this, can you imagine Sherlock Holmes coming out with going, all right, love, fancy a cup of tea? You know, I mean,
so you're saying that Northern actors only acted in Northern shows and Scottish actors only acted in Scottish shows, and it was never
I mean, like the BBC, for example, it had a BBC accent. It was like the Queen's English. It's called RP.
So the actors, no matter what region they were from, they had to tone down.
It was a standardized
accent and make their
Middle English. Yeah, it's what they call Middle English. So it's clear, it's crisp, everyone can understand it. Because a lot, I mean, if you got like Capaldi, let's say he was from like a real rough end of Glasgow and spoke with a real thick Glaswegian accent, like a real rough, get your honey and tea, you know,
meaning like Big B.
No one would understand it outside of Glasgow, not even other Scottish people. You know, like, so I mean, you have to be. I mean, I'm not saying that we can't understand the words she's saying, because
that's like Robert Carlyle in Trainspotting. You can't understand a fucking thing he said.
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine if the Doctor had that? I mean, why not?
I think that's one of the reasons that when David Tennant took on the role, he didn't have a problem with doing the RP, because they had just come off of Chris being North, and they didn't want it to be like a around the world accent thing. They just wanted to kind of, and not only that, but there was reasoning within the storyline that he had the RP because he imprinted on Rose, and he wanted to. Literally, that entire incarnation of the Doctor was made for Rose, start to finish. But the problem with Jodie and the companions is that they're wood. Like, their characters have not. They've had 2 seasons plus a Christmas special so far. Sorry, festive special. But there's no development in the 22 episodes that they've had. Just none. And she has not at all been able to establish herself as the Doctor. One of the worst scenes I think I ever saw was when Graham came to her, and I put a little clip of this in my last video, when Graham came to her expressing his concern and his fear over the idea that his cancer might come back. I understand that she's an alien, and that, yes, she's eccentric and is kind of socially awkward at times. But I also know that that the Doctor as a person is highly empathetic, comes from being telepathic. He knows how to talk to people.
Yeah. That scene.
She just stood there with like birds chirping in her face with the lack of what do I say now. It was just.
It was cringe. I was so angry at that point. I was so disgusted. I was furious. And the thing is, what they're saying that in defense is, and you know, the BBC trotting out the usual crap kind of non-apology, is that, it shows how difficult it is for people around cancer, people, survivors, how to deal with things. And I was like, yeah, that's not a hero. The hero will put their feelings aside and do the right thing at the right time. And even if she was stuck for something to say, all she had to do was put her arm around him. That's it. Don't have to say anything. That's all. Or listen. And not just say something so quippy. And the worst thing about it was played for laughs. We're talking about a character who is suffering a horrible disease that's affected that person, that character's life, that so many thousands and thousands upon thousands of people who are watching this show experience on a daily basis, whether it's in their family, if it's a friend, or if it's someone who works in hospitals who sees it on a day-to-day basis. that they could just play that for a laugh. It was played for a laugh. Now, that is the director's fault, but also Jodie should have said, no, I'm not playing this for laughs. I'll say the lines, but I'm going to make it really heartfelt and angsty. She didn't. She played it for laughs. She went along with that.
Makes me so angry that she's never once questioned anything that's been written.
Her character's not developed
on the script page.
She's
never offered suggestions. She's never said no. Like,
clearly
do you not have a spine in your body that you can?
Well, she's on board with the whole programming thing. She wants to be on board with the whole womanist agenda, the third wave womanist agenda. She's obsessed with it. It's quite clear. She's on board with it. The line when she said, "I've had an upgrade," that was not being said ironically or anything. That was done with almost hatred in her face, sarcasm. Like, I've had an upgrade. Like,
I can't believe that they would play that for laughs. And this is coming from someone whose mother is a survivor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we've all been affected by it. I think everyone across so many continents have at least at one point in their lives experienced either someone experiencing it or affected by it or dying from it or themselves having it. And this was a real, this sends out a message to a lot of people. It's okay to not know what to say and to just say to someone who's suffering and is scared for their life that I can't talk to you right now because I can't handle it. How narcissistic is that? How superficial and evil, frankly, is that? Because that is saying you don't matter, I matter. How I feel about your cancer matters more than you suffering that fear of cancer yourself. How does that play to an audience? The people supporting this, I have noticed, and it's not difficult to notice, that they are suffering from grandiose delusions of themselves, that they are superior over everyone else, that they themselves are the center of everything. If you disagree with them, you are almost non-human. You are other. You are not part of their group think. And it's really telling that they are more than happy to absorb and absolve this message because it plays to their mentality, it plays to their psychological type. They are narcissists. They have narcissistic personality disorder. And that can't be understated. This is what the BBC is pandering to a nasty, self-absorbed, self-congratulatory, self-masturbatory function of their mind. They absolutely love themselves. They see everyone else as inferior who disagrees with them. It's really, really very worrying, quite honestly. The BBC is more than happy to do this.
If they didn't think that scene was bad enough, then what was it? Can you hear me? Or was it
didn't watch that one?
No, the one where that entity was pretending to be Grace.
Right.
Was it that one?
Yeah, I think that's the one, yeah.
Towards the end of that episode, after they had defeated it, this was a heavy episode for Graham because he was fighting with everything inside of him not to give in. She was his wife, and she was killed, and all he wanted was to be with her again. The emotional impact of that had to be torturous to have to let her go, even though it wasn't her. And he's standing there on this little bridge trying to take a moment to breathe while the doctor and Yaz and Ryan are talking to the father and his daughter. And instead of going over to him and maybe putting a hand on his shoulder, just, doesn't even have to say anything, just to let him know she's there, that it's okay or whatever. She's, come on, Graham, it's time to go. dude, like,
Wow.
are you for real? This guy just had to walk away from the vision of who he thought was his dead wife. You know, when season 11 started, they had some really good plot threads, a few going on about Graham dealing with losing Grace. I mean, I know that Arachnids in the UK was overall the shittest episode fucking ever, next to Orphan. But the scene where he walks into his apartment and it's empty, and he closes his eyes because he's trying to remember her being there. That was probably the only decent scene in the whole episode, because it reminded the audience
in between all the male father figure bashing,
because it reminded the audience that he was still suffering from this loss.
Yeah,
I could not understand how at the end of The Woman Who Fell to Earth, they had the funeral for Grace and she shows up. I'm like, okay, look, I know he's your friend, but you don't know him all that well. He just lost his wife because of an alien that you were trying to fight. And I know that it wasn't necessarily your fault, but could you just not? This is probably not the best time. I would have personally liked to have seen Graham not get angry, but a little bit hostile. Like, why are you here? And maybe follow that plot thread as the season moved on, for her to have to work at gaining his respect back, gaining his trust.
Yeah.
After
but she's the bestest ever. Let's go into the next happy adventure. You know.
My wife's dead now, but you're amazing. You are so great.
So much smoke blown up, so many asses, but not Graham's. You know, it's such a sad indictment of the current era of the world we live in. It's just so hell-bent, to borrow a phrase, to destroy the patriarchy and to really undermine anything male, anything masculine, anything like that. It's so sad. It's such a character assassination on an entire 50% of the population. Really, for what? Is this equality? Is this equity? No, it's not. This is revenge, and it's so clear. It's so clear. It's all about destroying and bringing down, taking down things, destroying things, retconning things, undermining things, just in order to create a new narrative, which doesn't make any bloody sense. No one cares that it doesn't make any bloody sense. It's entirely about well, I said whitewashing. It's not. It's the opposite. But it's so racialist in its scope. It's so insidiously partisan to an ideology that not everyone subscribes to. It's a very small minority who are very vocal.
This is what happens when you cast people because you need to check off a box, instead of casting them because they fit the role. We're not stupid. The fans generally wouldn't care if the companions were black or brown or whatever.
Well, we haven't so far at all.
That's not what being a companion is. Not about the color of your skin. No one really gives a damn. As Jack is so fond of saying in Torchwood, oh, you people in your quaint little categories. Like, you know, I really don't think the fans care what skin color or what gender that the Doctor is, as long as it's played properly and the writing backs it up. They don't care what color, what skin color or nationality that the companions are, as long as the writing backs it up.
The only backlash that Chibnall got from series 11 was his treatment of gay men when he had a character. He said, you know, it was a policeman or something, wasn't he? And he's like, oh, I was just going to whatever with my boyfriend or husband or whatever. And then he got shot and killed. And there was a lesbian girl who was in that hotel thing. She was, oh, I'm a lesbian. And it's like, she got killed. And it was just like, and then he had to come back with a story surrounding two gay men in order to apologize. And it's so pandering and so cynical again. It was just like, oh my God, can you do like a story that is not based on apologies for everything. You know, it's so disingenuous and so absolutely shallow, and it's nothing but surface material.
This
It's
is why when
so
Chibnall
insulting.
did Praxeus with that subplot with the two husbands, and one was trying to save the other, blah blah blah. You can't. There's no character development between them because they're not put in the episode to go on a journey. They're just there.
Well, they're two different characters, and you don't see, you don't have that belief that they're actually together, because they're not together at that point. They're two different characters. Later on, you find out that they're married, and it's like, well, why? What's the point? You know,
they're just there to tick off a box, not to have development or go on a journey.
I see through that, Chibnall. And it is insulting, because it's like, if you're gonna write gay character, I mean, Captain Jack is pansexual, right? Whatever you want to call it these days. Universally loved across the board.
Oh wait. Speaking of Jack, can you explain to me something? I'm going to assume that you've watched Torchwood as well. Yes.
No.
Oh well, then I can't ask you.
I'm a Who purist. You know, I acknowledge the extended universe. I mean, I've only recently really started going into the audios, because for me, it's what's on TV that matters to me. I know it sounds very.
What always irked me about Torchwood was that when it started off, it wasn't just subtext. It was obvious and out in the open that Jack and Gwen. Yeah, like, even though she was dating somebody else, she was head over heels for Jack, and he loved her. But then at the end of it was end of season 3 for Doctor Who and end of season 1 for Torchwood, when he ran off after the Doctor and they had the whole Last of the Time Lords thing.
Yeah.
When he came back, she was engaged to Reese, because she realized that Jack wasn't a safe bet. He wasn't dependable.
He's a player.
Well, not just that, but he's not dependable. They didn't even know if he was going to come back. But yet, in season 2, the relationship got even more deep because of what had happened. There was this character that had insinuated itself into Torchwood without them even realizing that it was there, because it could manipulate memories. So it made them believe that he had always been there when he had only actually been there for a week.
Yeah.
And she actually admitted that she was in love with Jack, but once she had to forget this villainous alien, she had to forget that she'd even said it. But there was a lot of revelations that kind of came out, and even all the way down to the wedding day when she married Reese, there was still unresolved tension. But as soon as she married him, it was poof, it disappeared like it was never there. And then he went on and started his relationship with Yanto, which heretofore before that was always more of an unrequited thing on Yanto's side. Like, how are you going to build some shit up on one side and then disappear it like it never existed? Were they trying to pander? I'm not sure. I don't know what the BBC was like then. So I can't really say.
I think this stuff has been gradually increasing. I think Common Purpose have had their grubby mitts in this for a while. But things obviously ramped up after 2016. Things have been really ramped up. I mean, in terms of socio-politically, I think they shot their load too quick. Because what they've done effectively is shown their true colors in a way that has bamboozled a lot of people, where they were slowly creeping this stuff out. It was insidious and under the radar. Post 2016, they came out of the woodwork like, boom, we're here. We're going to change the world. Revolution now. You know, it was just like, and the media was totally on board and pushing it. And they were in hyperdrive on this point. And I think that sent ripples through everyday society, general people, the general populace.
Well, the reaction
has been more aggressive against it now I don't think. I think if this was if things didn't happen like they did in 2016, this would still be rolling out slowly. But now they've had to step it up a gear or a few gears, because they need to react, and they can't help themselves. So they've really outed themselves.
Not to lambast Moffat, but I think, as you said before, that some of the problems kind of did start in the latter half of his era. And I think the biggest problem that I had, which kind of feeds into what Chibnall's done, is that Moffat's companions didn't have a base. Like they weren't realistic enough. They didn't have families of their own. Like Amy had Rory, but he was her fiance. When the Doctor first meets Amy, her parents are not there. I think they're dead. And she's living with an aunt who you don't ever see. Clara, you get one episode where you meet her father, I think. Then her mother dies in a car accident or something. But you don't really see her with family per se. She's a nanny at first, taking care of some kids, but they kind of treat her like shit. So she doesn't really have a connection with them. And then she goes on to be a teacher. He doesn't ground them. He never grounded them well. Whereas Russell was so good with the companions because he grounded them in a sense of reality. Rose was just a regular person off the street, dead-end job, single mom, just a regular person. But each one and Martha was a medical student, and she came from a family was a little bit more well off, with a mother and a dad and a sister and a brother, but they had their own internal problems. The father had cheated and stepped out. They were always fighting. The sister was kind of stupid in her choices.
This is what RTD had. He's got a proven track record of writing stories with engaging characters. That's why he was so successful. Moffat comes from writing comedy. He wrote Coupling, which was a sort of British answer to Friends, I guess, in a way, but sort of much more British, much more quirky, and a bit more risque, I guess. And so he's got that kind of situation comedy thing. So he's got that beat. And the characters are a bit more quirky, a bit more comedic, I suppose. But less evolved as characters than, say, RTD's, because his human dramas involved more drama, more nuanced drama than, let's say, comedy writing.
You got Donna, who, yes, she's a temp, but she has no self-esteem, and that's why she's so loud, and she gets obnoxious with people to hold them at arm's length so that she won't.
Great casting as well. And I mean, Donna, I mean, I liked her as a comedy actress anyway, from her own show and things like that. So I knew her from before, but I was dubious about her being in Doctor Who, but I grew to love her so quickly.
It's funny, when she first came on in Runaway Bride, I thought she was a loudmouth fishwife. Yeah. Maybe I was a little irritated because we had just lost Rose, and she
surprised us. Like when they did that story where the Doctor's not there anymore, and she turned turn left.
That was her best episode. She was amazing.
Oh my god, that story! I rewatched it recently on the TARDIS Zone, and it was so heavy, and she carried the story so brilliantly as an actor. And
her journey was always
engaging, and it was so beautifully done. And when she was crying, you could believe what she was going through.
Because she believes in her heart of hearts, mostly because her mother is a complete bitch who treats her like shit.
Yeah.
That she's worthless, and that why would a Time Lord care about me? Why would I? And I know that when he first met her, that he came off as kind of a bit of an ass, and he's like, why would you be here? You're not important, blah, blah, blah. But you know something, you have to understand his frame of mind at that point. He was a broken mess at that point, because he had literally just lost the love of his life. So I can forgive him that just a little. But she grew so much over the course of the one season that she was in, that in that last episode, when he had to take her memories and literally everything she was away, all that growth she had and everything that she became and all that confidence, I cried because I come to love her so deeply. Because she was just what he needed. Not a lover, but like a sister, somebody who would call him on his shit, and somebody who would be there for him when he needed her, but at the same time would make sure he wouldn't do anything stupid. And who understood him, didn't have that undercurrent of unrequited whatever that Martha had, which I really wish that Russell hadn't done. It was a disservice, because Martha was actually a really good companion that got the shaft.
That was terrible. I mean, I think her whole run was actually sort of overshadowed by that somewhat, and I think that was very unfair. But with Donna, I think that in her ordinariness, the Doctor pulled out the extraordinary within her, and that, I think, engaged with people, because it made people feel that even in the most ordinary of existences, that inside is this extraordinary person inside everyone that is there waiting to be unleashed. And I think that's a wonderful metaphor for humanity, and for people who are in sort of dead-end jobs or in a life they're not happy with, that, you know, that person might come along one day and unlock your potential, or you will unlock that potential yourself through simply just watching someone like Donna on the screen. And I think that that's a beautifully done thing, and that's how RTD was exceptional in his character development and unlocking people.
I mean, he could take the Doctor could take Joe Schmo off the street and make you the best version of yourself just by knowing you. But
he also showed that it also has risks, and it also has that it can hurt you, but sometimes you just got to take that risk, and even though it could end so horribly like that, which we will never forgive people. But
de Pompadour was so fond of saying in Girl in the Fireplace, the Doctor is worth the monsters. Yes, when you stand too close, as Sarah Jane said, you tend to get burned, but he's worth it. Because knowing him makes you the best version of yourself. Unfortunately, when Moffat took over, because as you said, his writing style is very different, he didn't ground the companions enough in reality to make them relatable. They didn't have that family background. I know that the Doctor never got along with his own race. He misses them terribly, but at the same time, he never agreed with their rules and their ways of life. There's a distinct difference between the family you were born to and the family that you chose. And do you remember that big poster, that advertisement for the Children of Time, where Jack and Sarah Jane, Rose, Martha, Donna, Wilf, they're all there, and the Doctor is in front? You know that big poster?
Not off the top of my head. I'm not very good at visual.
It was a advertisement they did for Stolen Earth.
All right.
It had them all there. Jack, Sarah Jane, Rose, Martha, Donna, Wilf. They're all there.
Oh, I think I remember it. Yeah.
That's the family he chose.
Yeah.
And they meant more to him than anybody on that planet that he'll never see again. That's the family he chose, a family of his heart. They were the ones that gave him that humanity that he thought he had lost. So when he becomes 11 and Extension 12, when you have Clara and Amy and River Song, who all had these fantastical destinies, born to save him, born to do this, whatever, blah, 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 and don't have a grounding in reality, it makes it really difficult to empathize or relate to them as characters.
Well, this is
And
why
then, of course,
Mickey was such a great character as well. I mean, he started off as such a wet lettuce at the start.
dog, yeah.
But he really stepped up to the plate at the age of steel. And he saw a vision of what he could be. But what he thought this other version of himself was just like him. But he still stepped up to the plate, and he wanted to continue that. And I love that. It really, that's how RTD could sort of draw out so much empathy from his characters, from you watching them, and you could put yourself in their place. But relatable. Whereas current era, none of these people are relatable because they are such stereotypes. They're there just to put a narrative, just to say the right words about the right subjects. That's all they care about. And that's sad because it's undermining it's undermining the actor, it's undermining the character, because all they're hanging everything on is, again, superficial, immutable traits. You cannot develop or grow a character. You can't grow someone's skin color. You can't grow someone's sexuality, but you can grow a character.
Because that's something they're born with. And, I knew that Mickey always had that layer, that depth in him.
I recently see in his eyes, and that's Noel Clarke's great ability to show you with his eyes.
Listened to Rose Tyler Dimension canon. And one of the stories that they did, the very last one, Jackie goes with Rose to whatever parallel world, and they're all partying because it's supposed to be the end of the world. They've only got a few weeks left before a asteroid hits Earth, and they're at the Palace State, and they're running around trying to stop them from partying, and they're trying to stop. Or Rose is looking for the doctor, but Jackie's just trying to reconnect with who she thinks are her old friends, but they're really not because they're parallel. And she goes into one of the apartments, and who does she meet? Odessa Smith, Mickey's mother. Mickey's mother, who was her best friend, who in her world is dead.
Yeah.
Who died when Ricky was young because she, her husband had left her and she just couldn't cope. This woman was tough as nails. And I knew right for that moment that that's where Mickey got it from. Yeah. Just because in one world that she couldn't cope didn't mean that she didn't have it in her. She just didn't have the right support.
That's it. I mean, that's the great thing about RTD's era, in the modernizing of Doctor Who and expounding upon the viewer, which is the companion. The companion represents us. So he gives us something even more to relate to, rather than sort of an idealized kind of stage acting kind of 70s style where they come in and they're there to ask questions and things. As much as I adore and love the classic era companions that I grew up with, and certainly the ones I learnt more of when I was at school with my Doctor Who school club, when we got to see all these wonderful videos of the Pertwee era and earlier stories and whatnot before they were released on VHS. So yeah, I mean, that's how it was back then. And that's how we expected things back then. We're kind of more spoilt now because we have been allowed more access to the companions and to learn more about them and to learn to love them and to grow with them, which I was always very cynical of when New Who started, because I always understood Doctor Who in the way that I had always grown up with. So I always thought this is a bit too soap opera, it's all a bit too mushy.
At the same time, it was brilliant because it really demonstrated.
Yeah, but it's something I've learnt since rewatching a lot of the new era to understand that yes, this is still Doctor Who, and it's okay because it's it is more of the reality side of presenting drama these days.
But in classic Who,
it's not hyper realism, but it's
then
still
in classic Who, with the exception of Jo Grant, because she went on and got married, most of the other companions he had either plucked them from different planets or different time, like places in time, or in the present day, but they didn't have outside connections. So it was really just them, other than Perry, who had a family, but you didn't really see much of them. But it didn't really.
It was only Ace really who started the whole companion backstory thing.
It didn't really show how much of a risk it truly was to be his companion until you got
drama. TV audiences matured over the decades as TV developed.
You know, for as much as people like to say that Love and Monsters was a shitty episode, and don't forget that whole episode was based around a children's contest where they had to send in drawings, and whichever one of the monsters was picked would be the villain. Think about that first. But the subplot with Jackie meeting Elton, that was the best part of that episode.
I have to say, I have never watched that episode. It's the only episode of Doctor Who, I think, from the New Who era anyway, that I have not seen.
If you
that's weird.
Totally ignore the monster part, if you totally ignore that and just focus on the parts with Elton and Jackie, see, the little fan club or whatever that wants to find the Doctor, they have, since Elton has actually seen him himself, because the Doctor, there was an alien that attacked Elton's mother when Elton was a child, and she died, and all he remembered was seeing the Doctor standing there when he was a little boy and his mother dead, but never really understanding why. And that's kind of fueled his entire life of wanting answers, wanting to know what happened to her. So since they know that he's had intimate contact with the Doctor, they want him to go after the Doctor's companion, who was Rose. So what they did was have him meet up with her mother. And it's a really stunning and well done example of what happens to a companion's family when they're left behind. Because Jackie was so desperate for her daughter to come back, and she was so lonely that she was willing to open herself up to this perfect stranger who was quite a bit younger than her, just to have somebody there. She was literally throwing herself at this guy because she was so lonely. And then when she realized the only reason he was there was because he was looking for the Doctor through Rose, she was devastated. And that's part of the reason that she called Rose back to deal with him, because of what he'd done. That part of it was so well done. And it's a really stunning example of how real the companions and their families are, and just what it does to those that you leave behind when you go off. Like with Donna, she just took off without telling her mother where she was going. And her mother was upset. Don't forget what happened with Martha. Soon as she came back, and this was, 4 episodes in, because there was Smith and Jones, and then Gridlock, Shakespeare Code, Daleks Take Manhattan, it's 5. It was 5 episodes in before she finally came back home. And granted, it was only the very, for him, he made it that it was only the very next day. But by that time, Torchwood was able to get to her, or Saxon's men was able to get to her mother and fill her head with all these lies. So the very first moment she sees him outside of that Lazarus building, she slaps him square across the face.
Yeah.
Because she thinks he's dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that kind of realism that I miss. And because Moffat had continuously grew away from it, Chibnall just kind of took his page from that, and now have made his companions so wooden that nobody gives a shit about them, because
they're just stereotypes. They're just stereotypes, and that's why they don't work, because they're so shallowly written. And whenever he needs a plot device, we'll just now develop Yaz as having depression. Where did that come from? Nothing in the entire series before, or the stories leading up to that, showed any signs of this whatsoever. Nothing. There was no inkling. And it's just so done for such... I mean, look, I understand these conversations are important or good to have if done well and handled well and written well. It's not done in that case at all well, because it seems so clearly... I bet it's never fucking mentioned again. I mean, she's going soon anyway. We know that she's... no, she's not going. She's staying, isn't she? But I bet they never touch on that again. They'll never touch on it. It'll never be mentioned again. Like the dyspraxia thing, because he's going. So that was just like a nothing burger. So all these very superficial things added in just to make them not even interesting. They're just there because they can tick the box and say, well, we've addressed that. We've addressed that. We've addressed that. Tick, 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 tick. That does not a character make at all. And it's so preachy and dour and boring and depressing. And it's like, what was that episode when they're just sitting there? It was the one with all the mental health thing, which was, again, pandering to you know, just for social commentary's sake, and handled in a bad way. As someone who suffers mental health problems myself, as I believe a lot of people do, quite honestly, I don't trust anyone who isn't depressed. It felt so hammered on, you know. It was just like no nuance. It was just so heavy-handed. And there's a scene where they're sitting in that bloody depressing cafe with a scene with Ryan and his father that went on for on and on and on for fucking ages. And it's just like, this is like watching a bad episode of EastEnders. You know, it was just so unengaging. And it's like, I don't care about these people.
If
they don't make me care
beforehand, like, you know, what had happened between him and his dad, given a little more plot detail about that earlier on.
If we'd seen more of his dad earlier on,
right,
and his interactions, like, okay, he's not there, but I mean, surely, you know, something like a scene here or there. I'm not going to talk, like, if he's just there for like a second, it's like he turns up, he's like, I'm not talking to you, and he just goes. I mean, that's at least something to hook onto. Nothing. And it's insulting, quite honestly, to the actors.
It's the same thing they did with Yaz, and in Arachnids, they had them going over to Yaz's apartment, and you meet her dad and her sister, and her sister is immediately unlikable from the jump.
Oh God, isn't it? I like the parents. I think the parents were great.
Their parents were okay. I liked her mom, but I just...
But then they did that scene where it's like, are you two seeing each other? Are you girlfriends or something like that?
Are they really? You know, I heard they're really...
And I knew then, right there and then, that this will be the thing that all the crazy people are going to hang their little theories on, and they're going to start shipping them together. And it's just like, oh God, don't do this, please, God, don't do this.
They are going to die on this hill, and the BBC is going to push it until the doctor...
Look, they've gone down the hill. They've rolling down the hill. The crown is broken. It's over. I mean, where else can you take it? I mean, like, you've dug all the way through to the core of the planet. You'll end up in China next series. I mean, seriously, it's so over, right? All the excitement has been drained out of it, like a fucking postmodern vampire has just come along and sucked the life out of it. They sacrifice plot and character for preach and politics. It's bollocks.
I liked Yaz's mom. Boring. I just didn't like her getting insulted and fired from her job before she even got the chance to start it by...
Right.
Trump guy. You know, that made me mad, because I know who that is. You might not, because you're in the UK, but I do. That actor is Chris Noth, and he spent over 15 years on Law and Order here in the United States, playing a role he is very well known for, and he is a great actor. And for him to be lowered to that nastiness is beyond the pale.
The Trump replacement.
Chris Noth deserved better than that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest. This shits on all the wonderful, great actors who've played the Doctor, all the wonderful writers, male and female, who have written for Doctor Who over the years. Their legacy is destroyed by this current era. It's an insult to everyone and everything that's gone before. I don't care what any of these Jodie heads say. You can say what they bloody like. They've been watching this for 5 minutes and they think that they've got a handle on it, El. No, you don't. This is not Doctor Who. It's not. Yes, it's got a police box, which is problematic now, by the way. So I mean, don't be surprised if that suddenly changes its appearance. You know, okay, the Doctor's a woman. I could have handled that, but the writing is so bad.
That it was possible as long as it was done right.
Yeah,
we know it can be done.
Missy proved it could be done right. A lot of people disagree with me on my side, and I can understand why. But I thoroughly enjoyed Missy a damn sight more than I enjoyed Sim. And it's something twisted that I think the Master would do. Remember, the Master is the master of disguise. Disguise as a woman. And the look on Capaldi's face when he thought, "What the fuck have you done? you're the what?"
What the hell?
Which showed to me that this was not something that was normal on Gallifrey. This was something you didn't do. It was only really sort of vaguely kind of established that the choice could be there when the 8th Doctor regenerated into the War Doctor in that little episode. That was just thrown in, obviously setting up the what's to come. And
they had no choice in that, because the only reason they did it was because Eccleston wouldn't do it. If Eccleston had done it, there wouldn't have been a War Doctor in the first place.
Which, yeah, and I still don't forgive Moffat for it. I mean, love John Hurt.
Bullshit. But why didn't you just let
the canon?
Just let McGann have it. For fuck's sake, just let McGann have it.
Exactly, right? Exactly. I don't know what the problem is with McGann. I mean, I don't know what he's like as an actor, as a person, but I've heard nothing but good things about him. So why they just did this to him, I don't know.
Up until that point, Day of the Doctor, everyone had believed that his doctor was the one that was in the Time War.
Yeah.
Everyone was pretty much, on board with that and had believed that from the jump. So
you can imagine him. He's like a Byron-esque. It's like a Byron-esque character. Like Lord Byron. You can imagine like when he's fighting for the Greeks in whenever it was, 18 whatever. So he's there, very cavalier with his shirt open. You can imagine him in a war with the hair and the wind, and come on then, lads, tally ho. You can see that he's a romanticized Doctor, so he's got a romanticized notion of heroism, like a Byron-esque type.
He did more for the role of the Doctor in that 7 minutes Night of the Doctor minisode than Jodie did in 22 fucking episodes.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's not because he's a man or she's a woman. It's that she doesn't care. It's a job for her. She has not endeared herself to the entirety of the fandom. She hasn't helped herself. She hasn't helped this fandom. She's alienated over half the audience.
I mean, at that point in Night of the Doctor, he was struggling because he didn't want to be involved in the war. He didn't want to be a part of it. He didn't want to kill. He didn't want to fight. But by the end of Night of the Doctor, he realized he had no choice. And that's why he, gave up the mantle of the Doctor so that he could fight. McGann has the acting chops. I know he doesn't. Not only that, but his love for the character in the show, he's totally believable. Yes, he's totally believable. And if they had given him Day of the Doctor, it would have been so much better. I'm not at all disparaging William Hurt at all, because he did a great job too. And he's a great actor, bar none. But I just feel bad that they had to shoehorn him in simply because Christopher Eccleston wouldn't do it, when they could have just easily had McGann do it, and it would have been even better.
I feel exactly the same way, and I've said that as well for a long time. And I think that it is such a shame that Moffat, unlike Chibnall like Chibnall, he was quite happy to fuck about with canon, but he was at least careful enough not to completely obliterate it. Moffat sort of flirted with it a bit too much for my liking, and certainly with the weird canonization of the regenerations really screwed it up.
Because he painted himself into a corner by inventing the war.
Exactly.
Like, oh,
it's Gordian knots.
The last one. What am I going to do?
Yeah, exactly. He was too clever for his own good, and it didn't pay off a lot. And that's why he was a very divisive showrunner. And he trolled a lot, and I think he did that for kicks, and I think that didn't help him. With Chibnall, is so aloof with his and so arrogant that he doesn't engage with us. He doesn't even contribute to that, what used to be called the Doctor Who magazine, which is now, I don't know what it is anymore. I think the last issue is their biggest suicide note in history. I think that's the end of the Doctor Who magazine. I hope so.
Honestly, the only reason I even have it right now is because issue 556, which comes out in September, is supposed to have the 9th Doctor Rose story, which introduces them into the Time Lord Victorious.
I think the Doctor Who magazine should be licensed out. I don't think the BBC should be behind it at all. I don't really understand.
Don't forget now they share their licensing with China, so God knows.
Yeah. See, China's great. China's wonderful. Let's get money from China, even though they're doing outrageous and disgusting, horrible things to the Muslim population there. What they're doing in Hong Kong, what they did with the cover-up of the bug.
Wait, does that mean that they're going to have to change
the BBC are preaching us?
But does that mean they're going to have to change things on the show according to what the Chinese want to see?
Well, I'm sorry. Have the Chinese actually received these episodes yet? I can't imagine at all that the Chinese would allow half the content, at least half the content that they're pushing in this current era. They are profoundly racist. They are profoundly not keen on deviation of the normal in terms of sex, sexuality, gender, particularly. I think that I can't imagine that the Chinese Communist Party would approve of this. So I don't know what they think they were funding. I mean, they're not even time travel is. Stories about time travel were actually banned in China.
There's a lot of themes about the show that they wouldn't necessarily agree with.
I can't imagine. I just don't understand where that's coming from, unless there's like some propaganda in there I haven't picked up on.
You do realize they would have to censor like the entire back half of season 1 just to cut Jack out of it, right?
Yeah,
they would never go for Jack.
What about the episode Praxias? They'd have to remove that.
The pregnant guy, yeah.
I mean,
they're
quite happy to take genocidal money.
Yeah. And then in the Saranga conundrum, the pregnant guy.
Yeah, that's gone. I mean, we're talking about people, a country run by these people who take black characters on Star Wars posters and minimize them so that almost you can't see them in the corner down there somewhere. Look, pandering to them for the cash to get your political message across when you're dealing with a communist dictatorship which is doing all these terrible human rights abuses, and then they preach to us about racism and inclusivity. Really, BBC, you are taking their money and you are telling us how to live our lives. You are doing this unironically. I find that deeply disturbing, and I find also that the waiting this message. I mean that awful to camera speech from the Doctor cosplay doctor about global warming and that we're going to be these monsters if we don't pull our socks up type of thing. Didn't you fly to South Africa in a jet plane with all the crew? How many trees did you chop down, whatever, to make space for your little adventure story, make-believe thing? Yeah, I really struggle. And the fact that you produce and force your licensees to make merchandise for this era, which does not sell at all, barely, these plastic figurines, these plastic toys that'll end up in landfill because then no one's buying it. And you preach to us about
I saw
when conversations go one way.
I saw a Twitter post this afternoon from one of the Jodie fans saying that, well, you can say all you want that her stuff doesn't sell. I'm at my local store. What do they call it? B&D? D&D? I don't even know what.
I never heard of it either.
And I just came away with these 4 different Jodie doll figurines of the companions.
I'm glad we wasted their money for them.
Screwdriver. I just got all this, so I know that it's selling. Yeah, because you're the only one that bought the shit.
Bought it
just
all, yeah.
Do. That doesn't mean that it's all of a sudden selling like crazy. I guarantee you, they couldn't give that shit away.
They're so easily swayed into reacting because that's all they do is react to everything. They don't think things through. They don't have any logic circuits left remaining unfried from their education, inverted commas. What they have is this need to project their ideology and their support for the ideology above anything else. Yeah, they love her because she's now an outsider to them. So she's a champion for them because they feel like they're the outsiders. Like, excuse me, Doctor Who fandom have always been the outsider. It never mattered before until now that people's identities have to be like center stage of everything. Sorry, Doctor Who has been for everyone, especially the outsider, for all of its run. And like these people seem to think that they are like the special outsider group of the fandom. So therefore they are more important because they're the most downtrodden. And no, you're not. You're spoilt rotten. Shut up. Buy your plastic shit.
Honestly, if they want to challenge on how well that stuff sells, I can prove it. Because last month I was searching around online trying to find the 10th Doctor's sonic screwdriver for myself. I used to have the toy, but I lost it, and I was trying to get my hands on it again because I wanted to give it to my husband so he could use it as a base in order to build an actual one. And I went on eBay and Amazon and all these different sites, and hers and the 12th Doctor's, whether it's the blue one or the green one, they're all cheap, and they sell for no more than $20 to $30. 9s and 10s, and mind you, it's only been 10 years since David Tennant was the Doctor. It's not even been that long. Hundreds of dollars. Hundreds of dollars for the toy. I'm not talking about real handmade. I'm talking about a plastic toy that used to cost $20.
I guarantee you, these this era's toys, such as I mean, you can notice that no one's buying it. The reason why, look, let me explain something to these people. If you look at the packaging of the and the accessories that came with the figurines, okay, during the Tennant era, let's say, they were all the colors, okay, all RGB filled colors. You had yellows, blues, reds, greens, the whole gamut, right? You had it all. The packaging on the new era stuff is what? Blue and white or something? Was it gray, silver or something? I don't know. But it's two-tone. Okay, that means that they've cut down the cost of the packaging because they need to save money. Because a lot of the cost of producing these toys is in the packaging. If the packaging starts to look cheap, it's because they're not making money. Okay. So, I mean, it's more than clear. Listen, you're going to pick up Jodie stuff. I mean, you already can see it now. It's all reduced. Even her DVD was reduced before it was released. Like, I'm sorry, that's the fact. No one wants to buy it, not in the numbers that you want to think they sell at, because they are not. 6 million households, over 6 million households tuned out. That's normies and fans. Without the normies, you don't have a successful show. Without the fans, you have no show. And when you say, oh, there was still 4 million, whatever, 5 million left watching The Timeless Child, how many of those people watching The Timeless Child are going to come back after what happened in that episode? Maybe even half of that will go.
You went from having your long-standing fans, whom you then proceeded to piss off beyond reason, and they left. And then you were left with your jumping on fans.
And it became too boring and preachy for the normies. They fucked off.
Yeah,
I'd rather watch Country File.
They're like, nah, I ain't doing this. And then
oh, do you know the excuse? Oh, but viewing habits have changed. I'm sorry. Either you're a fan of the show and you watch it because you enjoy it, or you're not and you don't.
They take that into account. You know, I don't know how you guys do it in the UK, but in the United States, when they do their viewing figures, they add up not only the Nielsen ratings on the TV itself, but they also add DVR plus 3 and DVR plus 7, meaning they go DVR plus 3 days out and DVR plus 7 out for 1 week. So they add up all the ratings going out for 1 week because they are aware of the fact that a lot of people have DVRs and they don't always watch it when it airs. Sometimes they'll leave it in their DVR for a few days and then they'll, so they also add that. I don't know if y'all have that over there. I know you guys have the BBC iPlayer, which I know has its own problems.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you only have to watch 1 second of the episode on iPlayer for it to count. You only have to watch 1 second of it on the TV as it's being broadcast for it to count as a view. I think 1 second or 5 seconds or something like that. But it's a very, very short time frame, and they count it. So if people are switching off as the credits start, as the opening catch up or whatever, opening titles start, yeah, that counts.
They could literally be surfing channels and happen to flip onto Doctor Who for a second, and it's counted, and then they flip off to something else. That's stupid. Yeah. That's not really watching it. That's just surfing channels.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, it's amazing how quickly they turned on a dime when not the Timeless Child, the woman who fell to earth, how she survived that. I crashed from that height through a roof of a train and just stood up and going.
Yeah, because look, I know that
Don't get me started.
Are generally supposed to be a little bit stronger.
Nearly 11 million. What is it? 11 million people tuned in for that. Half of them were just interested. The next one went down to something like 9 million. Okay, that's normal. It goes down.
They were trying to give her a chance, but by the third, it was like, fuck it,
People turned off.
I know it's been established that Time Lords are generally stronger and somewhat more resilient than humans.
That's a fleshy body.
But that's still a fleshy body.
Through space, through the upper atmosphere, into a train roof.
If Sylvester McCoy can go down with 2 bullets, this bitch cannot survive falling through 10,000 feet in the fucking air? More? Yeah. Through a train?
Yeah, I mean, you would have been turned to mush.
Exactly.
Splat.
The strength of the velocity alone would have turned her to mush and set her on fire.
How lazy do you have to be to just write it like that and just write it off? That is the epitome right there. From that moment on, I mean, I was so confused when I first saw it. I was like, what happened? Did I miss something? Like, we had this cliffhanger of her falling out the TARDIS. I was like, fuck, how's she going to get out of that? And it was, but yeah, I'm all right.
What I want to know is, how did the TARDIS in the second episode, the Ghost Monument, wind up where it wound up?
Wouldn't it have been more interesting to at least have had her separated from the TARDIS for at least half that season? You know, to really,
maybe her journey was to find it or something. Yeah,
like good. I was expecting when Capaldi found the coordinates, or was given the coordinates to Gallifrey, that I thought was going to lead to a quest to find Gallifrey. I thought, oh, this is going to be like the key to time. Yeah, this is going to be great. Moffat fucked that up. So, you know, it's not just we have a go at Chibnall and Whittaker's era. We are hypercritical, as fans are, of everything in Doctor Who.
Wait, so are you saying that when she fell out the TARDIS, she landed on Earth and the TARDIS went into the vortex and landed somewhere else? That's what happened?
Yeah, or something. Or the Ghost Monument could have alluded to the fact that the TARDIS was still there somewhere and she had to go and find it. That it was, instead of materializing there and then, wouldn't it have been more interesting if it was just trying to materialize there? Wait. She had to sort of planet hop or something to get to it.
Okay, the Ghost Monument took place on another planet in the future, yes?
Yeah.
How the fuck did she get there without the TARDIS in the first place? Like how?
It was that microwave. I still don't get it. I to this day, I'm not going to rewatch it to try and make sense of it because it's
impossible. Literally, a Time Lord is the only race that have control over time, that can have the technology to do that.
Listen, it's Chibnall. None of it makes any sense. He doesn't care that it doesn't make any sense. So why should I? And there is the problem. As Gary said on his stream earlier, as actually said, when apathy sets in, you've got a real problem, and that's what we've got. Apathy. We at the point we're just trolling it because it's so god awful. And
if you weren't
all power to those who love it. I'm sorry that, you know, I mean, I'm amazed and I'm happy for you. I'm stunned, but hey, knock yourselves out. But don't tell us that we can't not like it, because we can. We don't like it. That's our right not to like it for whatever fucking reason, even if it's offensive to you. Tough tits. Human beings are, by definition, complex creatures. And unfortunately, they don't always fit into the molds that you project on them. And that's how it is.
If you weren't convinced by faux Trump and arachnids, surely you had to know that by the time you got to Orphan 55 with the furball woman thing, that they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like, really. Really scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Fuck's sake. I didn't watch that episode, and I to this day do not regret it. So I can't really comment on it, but what I've seen of it from various other YouTubers and clips is it's listen, for all the faults of the McCoy era and all the faults of the Trial of the Time Lord, I could sit through that on a loop rather than watch one episode like that. No. That's ludicrous. I mean,
yeah, for as much as the Day of the Doctor pissed me off,
just for it to be entirely a preach fest to tell us how bad we are. Fuck off, frankly. Fuck off. End of story. I do not want to be lectured at. If I wanted to be lectured at, I would go to a lecture hall and I would go to university again and sit through all that tripe again. No.
As much as I have issues with Moffat's era and his way of writing and his way of constructing characters, I would gladly sit. Hell, and I can't even believe I'm saying this.
Isn't it interesting? We can reevaluate
through a montage of River Song. If it meant that and you know how much I hate her.
Yeah.
If I didn't have to witness Jodie anymore.
Well, you know what? It really, for all the flaws of the Capaldi era, it has given life to the Capaldi era, as it's given us an opportunity to reevaluate that era. For all its many, many fucking awful flaws, it's still a masterpiece in writing in comparison to what we're getting now. And I don't try to understand why people love this era. I think half of them are probably enthralled by their peer group to like it. I think if they were honest with themselves, they know it's not good, but they can't face the wrath if they dare say anything against it. And I genuinely believe that. I may be wrong in some cases, but I think generally it's through fear of being exposed as someone who dares question the narrative. And I think that's a sad state of affairs. And I think if you're honest with yourselves, we're not talking nonsense. We're not talking nonsense.
Often
You can't tell me. You can't tell me. You can't tell me. You look at Tennant's era, or Tom Baker's era, or Pertwee's era, or early Capaldi, and say that was worse. I'm
Absolutely
sorry, no.
not.
It's just not the case. Objectively, just look at the writing alone. Forget everything else. Just objectively. I know you're all obsessed with subjectivism because it suits your narrative, but try to be subjective and look at the writing alone and tell me that stands up to RTD in any way whatsoever, any shape or form. No, not in a million years. It's a universe of divide between those two writers, and it's amazing to me that people cannot see. How infantile do you have to be to think that is a level of writing that does not patronize you? You are being patronized. Okay, Doctor Who. If you look at the Hinchcliffe era, or the era when I was what, 4 years old when I first saw the Doctor on the screen, I think. It was a very verbose script. The Doctor used complicated words. It was for children and families, but it was done in a way it didn't patronize the child. It sort of spoke to the every 11-year-old or 12-year-old. So a 4-year-old watching it could still understand it for what it was. But it wasn't trying to pander to anyone particularly. Just putting a grown-up writing for the mentality of, say, the average 11-year-old or something like that, and not talking down to them. This era does nothing but talk down to you. You are being preached at. The whole thing with the Orphan 55 praxis, all the rest of it, and the Rosa Parks thing, is patronizing you. It's insulting to the historical matter. It's insulting to Rosa Parks that this doctor was responsible for what Rosa Parks did. Really? Does that not take agency away from her? Does it not?
And even when they got even the smidgest bit close to having a villain who might have been believable, the bald dude that can gleams onto your deepest fears, whatever.
Oh, the fingery guy.
Yeah, they started with the way that started off. That could have been a really impressive villain.
I liked the start of that episode. I thought that was going
the
somewhere.
Actor was really good at it. I mean, he was giving it all, and then his fingers flew off.
And then this woman was the most important thing, and she cucked him like that because obviously he's a man, so he had to be put in his place. And that's supposed to be equal, right? But yeah, I mean, it was just so heavy-handed, and really, and that awful animated thing in the middle of it. If that was done at the start of the episode, it would have made more sense, but not in the middle of it. It was so corny and, again, lazy, because they rather tell than show. So what they're using is these terrible sort of childlike animations to describe to us what's going on. No, show me like dramatically. Not in a animated montage of all things. I mean, what is it with these fucking montages that Chibnall uses? It's so fucking lazy.
You know what I
It's
think a really
awful.
good comparison of the show Not Tell
Mm.
is in, what was it, in The Last of the Time Lords, when Martha was on her own, walking the earth, going from country to country and from continent to continent, sharing the story of the Doctor. You didn't see her going to different countries. You didn't see her going to different continents. You only saw her go into one house, and by then she had already made a circle of the globe and come back to London. But in that one scene where she was sitting on the steps, just this one regular person, not special at all, just Martha Jones, talking to this little group of embattled, downtrodden people who were looking for any sense of hope whatsoever, just to get them through the moments because of this crazy Time Lord who had taken over the planet. And you didn't have to sit there and listen to her tell a huge, massive story. That scene only lasted long enough for her to say a couple of lines. But in just those couple of lines, she inspired so much hope in them in a tiny few-minute scene compared to what we got now.
It's a mile apart. I mean, I say a mile apart, a universe apart. I just don't understand how people can allow themselves to be so spoken down to and accept that. I find it so insulting to my intellect. I
miss the Doctor's ability to be emotionally raw. That went out the door with Tennant. It came back a little bit with Capaldi, but it really went out the door with Tennant. I think one of the, other than Doomsday, of course, one of the rawest scenes he ever did was when the Master died. And he was desperately begging him to regenerate because he had just found the only other person in the universe who was like him, and he didn't want to go back to being alone. And it tore him apart when, not because the Master did it just to spite him, it tore him apart because for 1 second he had somebody there who was from home. He had someone there who was like him, and then he was gone.
And then look at Jodie Whittaker when she comes back to find Gallifrey's destroyed. I mean, come on, love. Put a bit of fucking effort into looking like, you know, not again. I mean, God, I can't handle it. I can't handle it. It's like, oh, it's like another fucking Tuesday night. You know, it's just, oh, that's sad.
Did all of that emotional upheaval and PTSD and pain and loss and everything that you went through as 9 and 10 and even 11 and 12, did that just escape you?
Yep.
Like, I know Moffat quasi fucked it up with the Day of the Doctor by making it not actually happen. That's what pissed me off most of all, because it made me feel like what 9 and 10
that was ultra fuck up. Yeah, I mean, it's like this is beyond ultra fuck up. We're like in nth degree fuck up.
Everything that they went through, all that rawness and that grief and pain and rage and loneliness and everything, all that development, his whole journey. And for what? Oh, it's not really destroyed. You just think it is. But it's okay, since you don't remember not destroying it, you can still be fucked up. It's okay. Oh, fuck you, Moffat. Fuck you. Seriously. And then so when she comes back, after all this time, her home that she's been trying to find and trying to come back to for billions of years, and she finally finds it again. Oh, wow. It's destroyed.
Again.
Oh, well. Oh, well. What the ever-loving...
I know.
Another thing that pissed me off is when they walk through the dimension gate, because I guess apparently Gallifrey now has a dimensional gate.
Yeah, never mentioned before, but hey, yeah.
Because you couldn't remember what he said when the Time Lords fell. The walls between the universes were closed, so therefore dimensional gates, you can't cross dimensions into other universes. Because I guarantee you, if you could, he would have been in the other one so goddamn fast, make your head spin.
And who's keeping the lights on, by the way? I mean, like, I mean, Gallifrey's destroyed. The Master by himself, and these few Cybermen who've got, you know, what knowledge of Time Lord technology to hand, manages to do this and keep the Matrix going. No one else is alive, but somehow the lights are on and everything's still working.
So her companions walk through the gate along with the last of the humans from that other planet.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even realize where they are, because I don't think she's ever spoken to them of the Time War or Gallifrey or anything like that. So they ain't got no fucking clue anyway. They have no idea the significance of what they have just done and where they're standing. I wish that scene could have been repeated, but it would have been Martha or Rose or Donna or any of the past companions that knew what it was to step on that ground and to be in that place after everything that the Doctor went through and everything that he lost. To them, it was just another planet out in the middle of nowhere, meaningless. What the ever-loving fuck?
Yeah, well, that's what you get with someone who clearly does not care. He does not care. All he cares about is getting across the narrative, not a narrative in the sense of a story, just the narrative of the political agendizing.
And wait a second. The first thing she sees is the Citadel, or well, this was back with Capaldi. The Citadel is, I'm confused. In Moffat's era, you see the smoking remains of the Citadel with a Dalek ship having crashed into it. This was End of Time, part 1 and 2. Then by Capaldi's era, when he goes back to get it, it's completely restructured and looks like it's brand new. And then with Jodie, it's destroyed again. But remember, all of the Time Lords have 12 regenerations. How long do you think it would take the Master on his own to kill every single one of them?
With a handful of Cybermen, you know, really.
Over and over and over again, unless he killed them and then killed them again while they're.
And this took millions of years over time with the Daleks to even get to that level. And then, like, the Master turns up with a handful of dumb fucking Cybermen, and just manages to do all that.
Because each major city of Gallifrey is protected by layers upon layers of sky trench, layers, and it was only in the very bitterest end of the war that the Daleks were able to break through. So you're going to tell me that one cyber ship is able to get through their defenses? The Time Lords, the most advanced race in the universe.
And one Time Lord who could have done this X amount of times over X amount of centuries. You know, in the 57 years it's been on, okay, the Master hasn't been around since, well, okay, 1970, since Delgado's Master was introduced to us. Bless him. Seriously, are you telling me that at any point he could have just destroyed Gallifrey for pretty much any reason and taken all of the Time Lord technology at his disposal with the aid of one Cyberman or one cyber ship? Really? Why didn't he do that then? Why didn't he do that? I mean, fuck all this timeless child stuff. I mean, like, the Master needed a reason or excuse to do that and to have his revenge on Gallifrey anyway.
Does people not realize that if the Time Lords thought they were under threat, it would take nothing for them?
And the Doctor didn't know that Gallifrey was destroyed? Why didn't they call the Doctor saying we're being attacked by the Master and the Cybermen? They could have recalled the TARDIS at any point. Didn't happen.
Exactly.
Seriously?
Don't forget.
Chibnall, fuck off, Chibnall. Fuck off.
Don't forget, based off of what I remember seeing in Hellbent, in Heaven Sent and Hellbent, when he got to Gallifrey, I know for a fact that the underground factories building the TARDISes were still active. It would take nothing for them to launch war TARDISes in space and God help you.
Why did the Master
think that one Cyberman ship is going to stand up to an army of war TARDISes? Yeah, go fuck yourself.
Listen, if the Master was so concerned and wanted to destroy the Doctor by saying you've been lied to and this is who you really are, ha ha ha. I mean, fuck off. Didn't need to do that. The Doctor wasn't even aware that you destroyed Gallifrey until you told the cosplay Doctor that you destroyed Gallifrey. I mean, why didn't you just get your fucking Cybermen? The Doctor is completely unaware you've destroyed Gallifrey somehow, and the Time Lord somehow didn't warn the Doctor or anything. Okay, fine. You've got a bunch of fucking Cyber Time Lords. Why don't you just all get in your fucking TARDISes and then go off and destroy the universe and time itself? The Doctor was completely unaware of it anyway. So you had the element of surprise. You could have just gone off and just taken over the entire universe, and the Doctor would be the last fucking person to know about it. I mean, what a big fucking gaping hole in your plan. Like, seriously,
even that itself is ridiculous thinking, because you know for a fact that because Gallifreyans are a telepathic race, that they are all connected through their minds. As soon as Gallifrey was reborn and came back, he immediately had access to all of them in his mind. So if Gallifrey was attacked by the Master and they were all killed, he would have felt them blink out. I'm not used to these pronouns. She would have felt them blink out in her mind instantaneously. She would have known.
I mean, this is precisely. I mean, look, defenders of this era, listen to what we're bloody saying. I mean, I didn't even think of this until off the cuff now. All right, and I didn't even have to think that hard about it. It's only because it's come up and I'm thinking about it. It's like, oh yeah, there's that as well. I mean, like, how many more ideas, you know, I mean, like, off the cuff ideas can we just spout off that undermine the entire premise of that story? It's so ludicrous, so utterly ludicrous. It's indefensible. We've demolished it in the last few minutes completely. I mean, it's so ludicrous and stupid. How can you not feel fucking embarrassed to defend this and not feel fucking stupid? It's stupid.
The other thing I didn't really understand, aside from that whole Irish guy, abandoned baby.
Yeah, what was that about?
I mean, police officer subplot. I think that was like the Matrix's idea of the Doctor's life only making it look human, so it would supposedly make more sense. But it didn't. It just looked like it was there for no.
I didn't watch that episode either, so I can't comment on that one either. That's one of them. From what I've seen and heard, it led nowhere.
Really, it was like shoehorned in there. It looked like it was like someone had accidentally spliced in scenes from another show.
I don't think Chibnall uses a pen or paper or a computer to write these scripts. I just think he uses a crowbar. You know, it's
Then they'll have the thing about the super secret division that the Doctor was supposedly a part of.
Yeah, but
going around
division. I mean, what the fuck is that? We already know that Gallifrey has the CIA. Okay, this Celestial Intelligence Agency, right? We know it exists, and they had to create another secret force that no one's ever heard of. I mean, come on, really? How lazy. This is just retconning for the sake of retconning, to crowbar all this shit in. Just all of this was just done to make the Doctor diverse. That's the only reason.
But they're directly contradicting what they had already established in the past, them saying that the Time Lords did not meddle in the affairs of others, that they're only there to ensure that the time streams that time was obeyed.
All the fixed points in time and space
all the fixed points were
tinkered with.
Were tinkered with. They even forced a regeneration on Troughton because of his quote-unquote meddling. So, and I know that later on in Tom Baker's era, and I think all the way up from Tom Baker to Colin Baker, that they did occasionally send him out to do things, but it wasn't necessarily to like harm anybody. They would only send him out when the situation was really grave and they needed someone there because they, I guess, couldn't do it. And now they're saying that they have a super secret division that actively meddles in the affairs of other species. What happened to Anthony Head's Krillitane in school reunion, who called them dusty senators sitting up on high, peaceful to the point of indolence? What happened to that?
Yeah, don't worry about that. Yeah, it's like nothing ever happened in Doctor Who before she came along and Chibnall came along. It's all just like a dream, and it's just a playground now for Chibnall to throw his sandcastle toys around and build his own.
It doesn't even make any sense that the Doctor would be a part of Division, because the Doctor, just by virtue of her personality, they wouldn't do that.
And now that that's now apparently unlocked, does this have an effect on the Doctor's character? Does this now make the Doctor start to question what their real mission in life was from the start? Do they have any resentment? Now this is all unlocked. Does the Doctor have this resentment now to the Time Lords? Does this Doctor now have a resentment towards Tecteun, of the Shibogans, or you know, the division? Is the division something that is a calling? Maybe the Doctor is truly evil and should be evil now. Has that not opened up like a whole thing in the Doctor's brain that they must now question their own identity? Oh God, let's not go down.
They're really going to try to warp the Doctor's core personality. I mean, okay, look, if you want,
and do we care? Do we now care? That's the big question. I just think
they really wanted to. But if they really wanted to go down that vein, you've got a ready-made story that's been 30 years in the making. The fucking Valyard, ready and waiting for you. Ready and waiting.
Never addressed properly. Yeah.
You want to?
I think Jodie Whittaker's Doctor is the Valyard because she's gotten so many people killed. She doesn't care. She doesn't even notice when her companions are not even there around her. She gets them into trouble. She's had loads of people killed. She's an empath, apparently, yet her entire race gets wiped out and she doesn't know about it. And has this dark backstory, which makes her this all-powerful god all of a sudden, of course. And yeah, I mean, if that doesn't scream Valyard to you, I don't know what does.
But the worst thing is, yeah, she pretty much encompasses, as the Valyard was written to, all of the worst traits of the Doctor in one person. Because every time she opens her mouth, you want to punch her in the face.
Yeah, especially when I've had an upgrade in that smug face. Like,
The Doctor is supposed to be written as eccentric but charismatic. And he's supposed to be written as this person that inspires awe and amazement from the moment
inspires me to get up and turn the TV
that you set eyes on him or her, that you want to be in their orbit because of who they are as a person.
She's not had a single moment, a defining moment where you go, that's the Doctor.
But she's
not a speech. I mean, she's doing speeches every fucking episode, and it's just exposition to end the plot for that particular story. That's all it is. There's never a big, Ascatan moment or the Zygon thing moment or the Genesis of the Daleks moment. None of that.
Epic.
None of that.
Epic.
We've not had a single one of those from her, and I don't think she could pull it off, even if she was written one, because it's she hasn't got the gravitas. She doesn't.
Instead, the longest speech that she gives that is supposedly supposed to have any emotion whatsoever is in a blank white room with a frog on a chair.
I can't bring myself to watch it. I can't do it, and I'm not going to. I don't deserve this. I'm not doing it. No. No, sorry. No.
Some of the time, sometimes the episodes don't even have proper endings. Like,
no.
Orphan
characters just wander off, never to be like that one in Babylon, whatever, that girl who was in a mental hospital or something, and then as soon as she finished serving her purpose, she just wandered off. We didn't know what happened to her. She didn't even say goodbye. She just wasn't there.
Orphan
it's like,
55
they forgot her.
is a glaring example. The episode starts with the companions mopping up after some sort of octopus-like alien creature infiltrates the TARDIS and it makes a mess. So
anyone could get into the TARDIS these days.
Apparently, I would like to have seen what happened prior to this. I would like to know how the fuck this thing got in the first place and how they managed to defeat it. So
guaranteed it will be her fault because that's what she manages to do every time.
And then by the end of the episode, she doesn't even help the people on the planet. Not really. They're still left there to stew in their own gases. And hey, only hope that they won't fuck up.
Hey, it's cruel to shoot a spider dead. It's much better to leave them all to suffocate together in a room or eat each other in a room. Yeah. So she's a psychopath or a sociopath at least.
They leave the resort, are beamed back up into the TARDIS. They're standing around the console like, oh, we're back, cool. And then the episode ends. Like nothing. You left them on the planet. You left them on the planet to struggle and suffer. And you're just going to hope that, well, maybe if we're lucky in the past, humans won't fuck up. And this won't ever happen. That's not how it works, asshole.
I struggle to remember any of these stories. The only things I remember are things that stood out so bad because they were so bad. It's kind of imprinted on me. And it's horrible because I can't fucking get rid of it. But it's so bad. It's so boring. That's the thing. I zone out. I start looking at my phone. I think this is Doctor Who written for people who are addicted to their phones, that they don't notice what the fuck's going on, don't particularly care as long as they're watching it because it's like signaling that they're good people. You know, it's devoid of entertainment value. It's so boring. More than anything else. Boring.
I think Chibnall's become so full of himself that he has forgotten the mechanics of his own show. Because that's not how time travel works, asshole. And trust me, we know this is true because every doctor before that has made a point to explain to his companions and other people that he's come in contact with that once he becomes a part of events, literally once he touches down wherever he's at and becomes a part of events, that he can't change things. So she's saying that if she leaves them to their own carbon monoxide waste gases and whatever the fuck those beings were that apparently used to be humans but then evolved into whatever the hell, that
bad CGI. Yeah.
That it's only one possibility, one possible future, because if in the past, if we can change things, that the human race, this will never have to happen. No, bitch, that's not how it works.
No, because she's already, because she was there. By the fact that she was there, she became part of events. They are fixed points now. So that's it. That's how we end up now. No, exactly, because this is so counter to everything that's gone before. This is how Chibnall's failed fundamentally to understand something he claims to be a fan of, and that the current fans of this era also don't seem to understand because they've been fans for like 5 minutes, dictating. I mean, the amount of mental gymnastics you must be able to do must take up so much processing power. That's why your mouths keep running off and why you're typing shit all the time. It's because you're not thinking actively why this is shit. All you're doing is trying to justify it in your own head because you have to marry it to your own personal political ideology for it to be valid. So once you've done all that extra brain power you had left, which is like enough to, light a fridge, is taken up with just defending and deflecting this because you know it's shit. So that's why you're so aggressive in support of it, because you don't want this era to fail because it boycotts, not boycotts, it gives your ideology buoyancy and it's something you can hook on to because it speaks to your group think. Sorry, the rest of the real world doesn't think like that. We're not the fucking Borg. We're not Cybermen, okay? You are the Cybermen. You're the ones with the hive mind, and that you must be like us or you will be deleted. You know, it's can you not understand how ironic that is? You know, we get told we're like a cult because we criticize it. Sorry, criticizing something doesn't happen by dint of just being angry or of, you know, this is just my doctor because it's a woman. That's such a facile argument. It's because we have critical thinking, not critical theory, to back us up. Critical thinking is the antithesis to critical theory because it involves actually thinking about things and looking at things objectively. Critical theory is looking at everything subjectively. And when you subjectively look at things, you are not being critical.
I won't say that there isn't a percentage of the fan base, a rather small percentage of the fan base,
and loud,
who are genuinely neckbeards and really don't like her because she's not a man. I fully admit there are certain members of the fan base that ascribe to this. I do not support that. That is not what we're about. We don't care that she's female. We care that her writing fucking sucks balls. I feel like I'm that one of the old ladies in that meme that's sitting on the couch watching the other old lady pointing at pictures she's got up on her wall, thinking that's how Facebook works, and she's like, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Like, don't you think that if the Doctor could have that if time worked where there was possible futures and that, you know, it could be changed, don't you think the first thing he would have done was gone back to Gallifrey and stopped the war? Or maybe go back and save Pete Tyler's life so that Rose Tyler could grow up with her father?
Yeah, because not everything's game. You know, everything's just a potential future. Yeah, that totally undermines the show. I mean, these people don't get that. I can't help them. I'm sorry. But,
Father's Day was one of the best episodes of season 1 for that purpose. And I'll admit, I know that Russell should not have forgotten that the Reapers are a thing. Really shouldn't have, because it would have been important, especially in stuff like Waters of Mars, where he literally messed with a fixed point. But that's neither here nor there. But the emotional impact of that, of Rose having to grow up and learn that there are some things that you cannot change, and that sometimes you can be the better for it. She made a huge mistake. She almost got a lot of people killed. Yeah, she had a chance to know her father for a little bit, but those rose-colored glasses that she grew up with, thinking that her father was the best person in the world, wasn't necessarily true. He was just a regular guy. He was fallible and fucked up and didn't always do the right thing. And her parents weren't always perfect. They fought and they argued, and life wasn't always great. But at the end of the day, he did the right thing. And that was a life lesson for her. A big one. It was had such an emotional impact. So now you're saying that there's possible futures where he can just go back there and save Pete like nothing doing? Way to ruin the emotional impact. Like,
and if it was traveling to an alternative future, that means going to an alternative universe. We know from the Age of Steel that this is not something that is possible. It was an accident, so it's not something that can happen on a regular basis, and he had to go and fix that stitch.
Well, now that the Time Lords are back, technically, sort of, he said as long as Gallifrey was in existence, that the walls between universes could be sort of traversed. I don't know if that has something to do with the main Eye of Harmony that's on Gallifrey itself, the one that Rassilon...
Or in the TARDIS, if you follow the 1996 canon.
Yeah, but he had said that when Gallifrey fell during the Time War, that because the Eye of Harmony was supposedly destroyed, that the walls between the universes were closed. But now, since Gallifrey is back,
well, it's destroyed.
All I know is if there was like an excess of possible futures or possibilities or whatever, and that the walls were thin enough, oh, guaranteed that bitch would have been making tracks to the other one, and he would have, Rose Tyler would be grabbed right the fuck up. Bye.
Yeah.
Making tracks.
And just to go back to the Doctor being a male thing, I think I was very open-minded. I was always sort of against it because I don't like that level of change. I like consistency. But I was willing to give it a shot. I don't think it worked. I think it could have worked. I think it could have worked if, like I said earlier, with Michelle Gomez or someone like that. Someone who was in the vein of the Doctor. But I still think that the energy of the Doctor is a masculine energy. It's a male energy. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And it creates a whole load of questions about Susan and is he a grandmother or grandfather? And it opens up this whole intersectional politics. And I don't like that. And I'm sorry, there are plenty of wonderful female Time Lords we could look at.
Romana, the Ronnie. You've got plenty to work with.
Create new ones, I think the Doctor is ostensibly a male role. I think we've tried the experiment. It's failed. I think the Doctor should go back to being a male. I think this era should be forgotten about. I have absolutely no problem with strong, independent, great, amazing, super amazing time ladies, if you want, to be created. But I think taking something away from the male and female audience, by making the Doctor a female, just doesn't work. And I think that
not only
we'll
that,
never know if it could have done. But
it
I
does
think
a disservice to every female companion and every time lady, every woman really that has ever been a part of or contributed to this show in any way, all the way going as far back as I would say to Verity Lambert herself, who is like the godmother of the show. So they're all automatically saying that because that they're only now shattering this mythical glass ceiling by making the Doctor a woman.
Is that stunning and brave? Is that a bold? No, I don't think it is. I think it's a cheap move. I think it was done very cynically. It wasn't really addressed. I think it was just done for show and just done in order to remove the stale male thing.
So all
and I think that's
female companions that came before are just worthless to you then.
Listen, I don't want the Doctor to be a homosexual. As a gay man, I don't need. I personally, as an individual first, I don't believe that I need or feel the need to have to see myself represented every 5 minutes on TV screen to make myself feel better. I think that's selfish. I think that doesn't speak to the majority of people, and I don't have a problem saying that. I think it's divisive. I think it's unnecessary. I always prefer the Doctor when he is asexual in terms of at least ambiguous.
I don't think he's asexual, but I have my own feeling about
I prefer the no hanky panky in the TARDIS rule. That's my that's where I'm coming from. The Doctor's like a father figure, but they don't like that.
For me,
seemingly.
All I know is you're talking about a figure who's from one of the most advanced races in the known universe, who has more technology and more understanding of the universe and the cosmos that you could ever comprehend. Do you really think a bunch of human-made labels like heterosexual, homosexual, pansexual, whatever the fuck, means anything to him at all? Do you honestly believe that those labels mean jack shit?
And to make it the central theme of this current era, I think it's beneath the Doctor to, they're trying to write in these things, like in the last season of Capaldi's, where they, he was saying, "Oh, you are obsessed with genders, and genders." It was kind of like the whole gender is a social construct thing, and I thought, wait a minute. So now on Gallifrey they have intersectionality, like really?
I think I
Amazing
remember
how much like Earth Gallifrey is becoming here.
I think I
that's
remember
wrong.
13 saying something in one of the episodes where my people, we don't have gender as a construct. It's kind of fluid. I'm like, since fucking when?
Yeah, bollocks. I mean, all this came about very late on in the Moffat era, and that's because of the BBC and this pandering to this crazy cult.
I mean, I'm perfectly willing to believe that you can switch between female and male. That's not what this is about. Because remember, in Hellbent, the Time Lord General was a man, and then when he was shot,
and what the first thing that she said, I'll never go back. That was the first time she was a man, and I'll never go back to that again. All that testosterone,
completely unnecessary.
I mean,
completely
really
unnecessary.
I mean, if that doesn't shout out a particular agenda, I don't know what does. It's so in your face, and that's really ruined that whole concept for me. I prefer the idea that they stick to their own gender thing. Listen, I'm not utterly opposed to it. I just think it's been mishandled because of the current climate. If this was done in the 80s or the 70s, I think that would have been interesting, because they would have, for one, addressed it. And I think they would have been a lot smarter with it. And there was feminism then, but it was sort of second wave feminism, not this loony intersectional thing.
Just
I think it would have been better handled.
Because some Time Lords can switch at their own choice doesn't mean that all will. And the Doctor heretofore has been a string of males. So why all of a sudden?
Because they've got to destroy that. That's not allowed anymore.
I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be a girl. See,
I mean, if it doesn't matter, then why does it matter? If you see what I mean, if it's
more often than not, each face he chose for a reason. There was always. It was every.
Well, you never know what you're going to get, which I prefer.
Yeah, but later on, a lot of the regenerations, I would almost say, from like 4 on, was really carefully thought out. It was a big deal.
But isn't it amazing that if gender doesn't matter, why does it women always have to be right now and perfect, without flaw? Not that Jodie Whittaker's character is written without flaws, it's just that they're not acknowledged as flaws for some reason. But does that not strike you as odd?
Because she's alien.
She's right.
Alien, so she's quirky.
So alien, she's like the definition of a Yorkshire lass. I mean, really. She comes across on screen not as the Doctor, but as a middle-aged woman from Sheffield who's a mother. Who could have been a school teacher. That's what I get. I don't get alien 900,000-year-old alien from Gallifrey who's been a man for all those hundreds of years. Doesn't come across. Am I missing something? Tell me if I'm
I don't know. What I do know is that Jo Martin managed to be a more believable Doctor in the 15 minutes she had on screen in Fugitive of the Jadoon than Jodie did in 22 episodes. I would have taken her, bar none. The minute she opened her mouth and said, "I'm the Doctor," I believed her. And then when they were in the TARDIS and she was shitting all over Jodie, I was like, this must be someone in the writer's room must not like Chibnall shit. And this must be some backhanded like.
I think what it is they felt she was too white, so they can't have her dominating the scenes with this new Doctor who we still don't know where they come in the canon, which doesn't exist apparently, but it somehow matters to them. Go figure. That she has to be, she's higher up the oppression triangle, so she has to be above her, so therefore she has to teach her a lesson. See, this is how the pop eats itself. This is how ideologies that are so restrictive eat themselves. This cannot end well. So now they're gonna make her bitch.
But even though she was a much more believable doctor, the canon is still fucked up, because she immediately says that she's the doctor and that's her TARDIS. But if she's a pre-Hartnell version, which a lot of the fans are saying she is, one, she didn't start being called the Doctor until Hartnell, first of all, and two, it wasn't a police box until an unearthly child when it landed on Earth and the chameleon circuit got broken. He chose that at the time.
A lot of people are saying this is. A lot of people are saying this is between Troughton and Pertwee, because we didn't see the regeneration happen, so to speak. So there could have been something that happened in between. I don't know. At this stage, I don't care. You know, it's so contrived and so obvious the reasons why this has happened that I don't care, because I'm being insulted. Doctor Who's been insulted. People of color are being insulted. People who are white are being insulted. Everyone's being insulted, apart from the crazy people who subscribe to this very racialist, very gender specific, very narrow-minded cult religion.
Cannot be an incarnation between Troughton and Pertwee. That's impossible. Because when they forced him to regenerate, they took his keys to the TARDIS, meaning they disabled it so he couldn't use it. Yeah. So how the fuck does she use her own?
Chibnall. See, doesn't matter what. I mean, all the questions you've got and that I've got can only be answered in one way. Chibnall. That's it. Nothing makes sense. Oh, it's the Chibnall effect. You know, he's becoming a trope. He will, at the end of all of this, will be looked upon as a joke. He will be looked upon as someone that, you know, oh, you've been Chibnalled. Oh, you Chibnalled that. For when someone screws something up so badly. Oh, that was a real Chibnall move you did there. That's how he will be remembered. That's his legacy. His legacy is destroying Doctor Who and being synonymous with major fuck-ups.
You know, I thought it was mad at Moffat for erecting what felt to me to be an unscalable wall between what came before with Russell and what came after. But this ain't no goddamn wall. This is a fucking mountain.
And this goes back to what I said to you before we started this stream, is that I think it should be written in contracts that the showrunner must stay on after the departure of a doctor. So they have to work out that the contracts are such that the showrunner must stay on and see through at least one season of a new doctor before getting of the old, at least keep the same doctor on from the previous whatever the showrunner. They have to have them for at least one series before they develop ideas for the next doctor, because it needs that continuity like it did in the 70s and 80s, and you know, through that period of time when you had that changeover. Even if it suffered maybe a little bit under new showrunners, not always. In the 80s it did. Tom Baker was tired. He'd been at it for like 6 years at the time. But I think the general thing is like they're around for 3 years now, and that's it. They move on. But to have the showrunner stay on for 5 years, so they take on the end part of a previous doctor. They stay on, they have their doctor, and then the new doctor comes on or whatever. Some level of overlapping continuity, whether it's the doctor or whether it's the showrunners. But when the doctor and the showrunner and the companions all leave at the same time, there's that big bop. And it's like, it's a new show again. I get that can work. It worked with the 11th Hour, but if you look at the difference between Chibnall and Moffat's era, it's like
jarring.
night and day. Okay, it's jarring. Exactly. It doesn't work so well. You need a level of continuity, and I think there's a real problem with especially with the level of turnout prior to Chibnall, who's a lazy git. Is that
Honestly,
the showrunner suffers burnout?
I think Moffat just stayed. Moffat ran for 6 years, right? 3 years with Matt, 3 years with Capaldi. I think he just stayed too long.
He burnt out. He burnt out,
and it shows in the level of.
I think. To be honest with you,
once you got that ghostly Odin in the sky thing, whatever the fuck it was, I was like, okay, dude. As a matter of fact, that episode with a shielder is when I kind of checked out for good.
I don't blame you. I don't blame. I was furious. I've been furious with the whole Capaldi era for so long, and then this came along. It's just like, how many more years do we have to suffer now? You know.
I watched up until the first 3 episodes of season 9, and then I just stopped. I haven't seen the rest of season 9, and I definitely haven't seen 10.
I think the trouble with the showrunners we've had, I don't think the showrunner thing works. I think it's better as an ensemble of crew and production. You have a producer, executive producer, and you have the script editor, and you share those roles out, and you don't have all that pressure on you. And they were churning out episodes week after week after week, bearing in mind, unlike this current era. I know things are a lot more technical now, and there's a lot more stuff to do, and in terms of production style and quality and filming is different, very, very different. I think what they need to do is they need to make it so that the shared responsibility is instead of having this big figurehead which can burn out a person. I get that. Should be avoided because the show suffers for it. If you're feeling like you can't do it, pass the buck on to someone else who can quickly before the show suffers. I think that needs to be really looked at more
honestly, carefully. I think Moffat should have left at the end of season 7 when the Translator storyline was done. I think that should have been it, and that the Capaldi era should have picked up with a new person.
Yeah, not Chibnall. Anybody else.
That Clara also should have been done. Once Clara's story with going in the Doctor's time stream was done, she should have been done. That was her entire purpose. Once that purpose was met and she saved his life, what else was she there for? That literally was her whole journey. After that, she was just kind of hanging on. And she didn't really have a purpose left other than to become more important than the Doctor and ultimately to try to become him in a sort of way. She got to be really annoying. That's why I didn't watch season 10, but I did like the fact that Bill Potts was more of a. I learned she's more of a realistic character. She just. Yeah.
I mean, apart from dropping that she's gay every 5 minutes, I loved her character. She was very down to earth. She was a breath of fresh air after that really rather annoying character of Clara. She got more annoying as it went along, and she definitely stayed on far too long. Absolutely right. I just think it just suffered because I don't think Moffat was on the ball. It was a bit of a mess, and I think it suffered. I think burnout is a real thing.
I don't know what the hell that Nardole was there for. Whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of took to Nardole, but it's him just being George Dawes from Shooting Stars again. He plays the same thing. It's the same thing in Little Britain. It's the comic relief. I mean, it's like when Missy came out the TARDIS, said, "I'm Doctor Who. This is my exposition. This is comic relief or whatever." true. I mean, he was trolling himself at this point. Moffat was, and this is at the end.
That's where it started, though. This is what happens when you have too many companions.
Mm-hmm.
Even sometimes 2 can be too many.
I think 2 is the right number. I mean,
well,
2,
if you do it right. Moffat was lucky
right.
because with Amy and Rory, he already had them connected. They were engaged.
I mean, sometimes it's good just to have like the one companion, and then like over a story or a couple of stories, you end up picking up another one along the way, and then they go off and do their thing.
Right,
that works.
Jack, or, But
I mean, if you look at Hartnell's stories and Peter Davison's stories, I mean, even though it was a large ensemble, Peter Davison still came across as the Doctor and still was the central role and still held together, given the number of companions. And Tom Baker as well, don't forget, had them first, and he still shone. Even though he was tired, he still outshines Whittaker today by a mile.
Unfortunately, by the time you got to Colin Baker, he had what? Nyssa, Tegan,
Adric.
He had far too many, and none of them was able to really develop properly because he had so many companions. When they got rid of them and Sylvester McCoy came in, it was just him and Ace. It was a really great partnership.
I mean, the Seventh Doctor and Ace. I think the Seventh Doctor would have suffered amazingly badly, really badly, if it wasn't for Ace. I think because he was so different. He was kind of a throwback to Troughton a bit, but to an audience who weren't particularly familiar with Troughton by that stage, because VHS wasn't really, the Doctor Who wasn't available as wide as is now. So you have to look back in the time that I remember it. And I think Ace was such a great juxtaposition to the Doctor's character that it was like they played off each other so brilliantly well. And it was a bit like the Doctor and Leela, in a sense, the savage or, the street kid kind of thing. And he's trying to refine her and to help her improve herself.
So now in the Chibnall era, we have 3, too many. Too many.
Only one has been relatively fleshed out.
Graham, minorly. And the other 2 are wooden planks to have no development whatsoever and just kind of stand there and do nothing. So
and just say how amazing the Doctor is all the time, just to remind her how amazing she is, and then Graham's there to remind Yaz how amazing she is, and Ryan's there being Ryan. Who's the YouTuber who isn't a YouTuber anymore.
One thing I always prided Russell on, and even to an extent Moffat, because as much as his characters, as his companions were a bit one-dimensional at times, all of the companions up, before the current, they all had a journey, and they all grew somehow out of that journey. Even as much as the Moffat ones were a bit one-dimensional because they had to be there for the sake of the Doctor, or your destiny was with the whatever.
Yeah,
they still had a journey, and their characters sort of developed over that arc that they were on there, and they were always very different from the people they were when they first showed up.
And the other thing is as well, you either loved them or hated them, but you were rarely indifferent to them. With this mob, I am totally indifferent. Completely indifferent. I do not care. I have no interest in them. Not because of anything other than the fact that they've been so badly written. It was such utter disrespect for the actors, in total honesty. It's a shame. It's a shame because they're supposed to represent us as the audience, and they're not allowed to do their role, and because there's so many of them, and they're not there other than to be tokens, and I find that so deeply offensive, and that upsets me so much with the people who support this era. And I think it's so stunning and brave, and Yaz is amazing. She doesn't do anything. How can you not be offended? You know, they deliberately created these characters because of their race, for them to be part of this story and this narrative and to go on these adventures, and they are treated appallingly badly. It's so offensive, and yet they support it. I just think it really speaks to how shallow-minded these people are, how deeply racist I think they actually are, to actually think that this is okay. I don't think it is at all. I thought Martha was a great character, not my favorite companion, but I think she was dealt a bad hand with being under the shadow of the romance thing with Rose. So I think she got a bad deal out of that. Mickey was great just by being an idiot who came good and stood up to the plate. And
I didn't like how they had her, how Russell had Martha immediately like smitten with him after Smith and Jones, when he had to kiss her because it was a genetic transfer to keep her safe from, or to get by him time.
That would be problematic nowadays.
He was trying to buy him. He was trying to buy himself time from the Jadoon, and that automatically just made her believe in like 5 seconds that he was in love with her.
I don't know. I think that can happen. That can happen. Well, and bearing in mind he's a Time Lord, godlike figure. You know?
I know it's very easy to be smitten with him. Trust me, I know. But I did pride Russell though in how realistic and how like heartbreakingly he wrote Ten's grief. I know that some people got tired of him always rose this, rose that, but you got to understand what she meant to him. She wasn't just his companion. And David himself, David, Russell, Julie, Billy, everyone that was involved said it. She was the love of his life. And when he lost her, he lost a part of himself. Maybe you didn't notice, but I surely did, that after she left, he was never the same.
Yeah,
and
no,
he spiraled quick.
No, I definitely saw it. I think as well, I think this also should put pay to any notion that the Doctor should form any more romantic bonds in the future. I really think after that, especially, that he can't afford that level of distraction again. It can kill him. It can nearly kill him.
And it would
he needs to back off. And for this whole idea of 13 and Yaz, no, it's counterintuitive to the narrative of the story. This is why canon is important, folks. You can't portray the character in this way because it's counter to that experience, and it cheapens it. It cheapens it. And just so you can tick the box, no. Stop doing it.
That pisses me off more than anything. They want to do this and demonstrate this and have this relationship or whatever because they want the representation.
And what chemistry? There's no chemistry. It took time to build that up between the Doctor and Rose. From his transformation from Eccleston to Tennant, for him then to relearn to trust him, and then for this all to carry on the way it did. It took ages. It took several arcs to get to that point. You can't just one season with no chemistry and no inference at all.
All the way to Stolen Earth, that pivotal scene where he sees her again after so long at the end of that road. And what makes it even better is the fact that when they filmed that scene, the script pages that David had, they purposely left Billy's dialogue out of it because they wanted to surprise him. He didn't know that she was going to be there.
Do you know what? Do it. Fucking do it, Chibnall. I don't care. Actually, now I've thought about it, I don't care. Just do it because it will just show you what you truly are. And I'll tell you one thing. I don't care. Fucking do it. Do it. Destroy it. It's dead anyway. Might as well piss on the body. I mean, it's just so you know,
it was such a slap in the face to everything he had with Rose and everything she meant to him. Oh my God.
Just make the fucking shippers happy. Just pound it to the people who will be gone in 5 minutes once they get what they want. You know,
do they have any
not Doctor Who
understanding
anymore,
at all the sacrifice he had to make?
They don't care.
Let her go with an exact copy of himself.
They don't care.
Never see her again.
They don't care. They don't care because as long as they can have their titillation and their little fetish, that's all they're interested in. As long as it fits their little narrative, because it offends and upsets people, they're happy with that because it's trolling the bigots.
There's reasons
that's all they
now.
think of. That's the only level of thinking that they're on. It's so one-track minded.
Said there's very important reasons now why he would never let himself be that vulnerable again. One, as you said, because it's dangerous. When he was with her, he completely lost himself in her to the point where he no longer cared that of the very real fact that her life was not as long lived as his and that he was going to lose her. There was a sticking point with him from the beginning, but after a while, it didn't matter anymore. He had forgotten that they were different and that he could lose her, and that if he did, it would destroy him if she died. And he had to watch her die. So
this is it. I mean, it's like the Doctor in he's let his guard down. He's regenerated into a romantic personality type. He's still suffering PTSD. He finds this girl. She changes him. She earths him, brings him back, and this thing develops. And he's not ready for it. And he also understands by the very nature of humanity that she is like a mayfly. Her life will come and go like in a bat of an eyelid. And that moment, he's so lost in it because he doesn't want to let it go. He has to let it go, and he reminds himself who he is and what he has to be. And
you know as well as I do that if the meta-crisis had never happened, he would have taken her with him at the drop of a hat. There wouldn't have even been a question.
Yeah,
you know,
quite possibly true. Quite possibly true. But the thing is, we'll never know. I mean, for sure. But yeah, I think what would happen was he would have had to act counter to himself, and I think even RTD was aware that if he did go down that road and wrote that way, that he would be acting against the Doctor's best interest at heart, because he knows the Doctor needs to be the Doctor and needs to be that self-sacrificial. He has to have this arm's length with humanity. He has to. He can love humanity, but it has to be a whole thing, not an individual, because it will destroy him. And this is kind of what he experienced here. And I think that ultimate sacrifice of his hearts for her was an important lesson for him. He is a Time Lord. He cannot betray himself. He cannot be anything other than what he is. And for all the hurt that causes, at least that makes him a lot more like us and less of a dangerous god. And I think that's an important lesson. I think that's something that he had to brood over and fix within himself.
That's what Russell had said in that confidential, that by giving Rose himself, basically in the form of the clone, that he was not allowing himself to go back. He's not allowing himself to get to that, to open himself up to that heartbreak again.
See, the thing is, should he have left her with him? Because he was a bit unhinged, wasn't he? Because he was he was quite happy to commit genocide, and leaving her with a genocidal maniac, maybe.
Well,
not a good idea.
He knew that she could make him better.
Nah, that's a good point.
That she could make him better, because she did that for him. Remember, that's very me. He needs you. That's very me. she could do for him what she had done for, well, him. So, you know, he knew that they would be okay. Him giving her a piece of himself, which is literally, there is no person in the universe that has that but Rose Tyler. She has the Doctor to herself because he is the Doctor. He might be partially human, but he is the Doctor. Make no bones.
Well, he's partly Donna as well. So there you go, shippers.
He loved her so much. So much.
On that note,
gave her a piece of himself.
On that note, and that lovely note, I'm going to have to call it a night. It's,
I'm just saying that for them to want to have a relationship with Yaz and the Doctor, not only slaps in the face of that, but to do it for political reasons or for representation reasons, it's like, come, honestly, just
it's
no.
cynical. It's cynical. It really is. And it's sad because for all the pandering and all the trying to fit all these things in to make everyone happy, you're just making so many more people miserable. And I think that that's not a sacrifice worth making. It was inclusive. It was everyone, all ages, races, genders, and all the rest of it could watch Doctor Who and love it. They didn't need to be pandered to or patronized in this way. It was always open and inclusive.
It just, to me, diminishes the sacrifice that he made for Rose, and it diminishes his love for her, because I don't care what face that he wears. Billy has said it herself, that it didn't matter what face that the Doctor wears. She would love any Doctor because he's the Doctor. And any Doctor would love Rose because she's Rose. Period. There's no way he's going to move on from that. The hurt might be less because he's so old, but what he felt for her is not just going to go away like that. And I refuse to have him to diminish that just to tick a box.
And the answer to that is Chibnall. That's all you need to say. And with that, I'm going to have to sign off because it's nearly 3 o'clock and we've been at this for hours. My throat is... No, it's been... if I wasn't enjoying it, I wouldn't have been here for... I wouldn't have been here for 4 hours talking about it. So no, I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, thank you for joining me on our little fireside chat rant bitch fest. And hopefully in the future, when we have a chance, we can have some more of the guys on. And we'll make it a whole thing.
You should come on the TARDIS zone. I'm sure Noel will be more than happy to have you on the panel.
I've been trying to get Noel to notice me, but
I know you've come up in conversation in the streams. I don't know if you've been watching, but yeah, we
oh, really cool.
Yeah, because we were talking about having some more female voices on the panel and having a discussion about this era and what it means to them, and saying, you know, we're not sexist bloody bigots and all the rest of this nonsense. Just because you don't like 1 or 2 females on the cast doesn't mean you hate all women. Look up the term misogyny. It's just ridiculous.
Exactly. I don't think I hate myself. Sorry.
Well, they might say you do. They say it's internalized misogyny, and I'm internalizing my homophobia, and anything that they want to deflect from reality. They have to try and cast everyone in a specific cast, put everyone in a box, shove a label on it, and not have to think about nuance or I mean, they're always talking about spectrums of things, but they don't seem to think about spectrum of opinion, which seems to be anathema to them. But what can you do? Chibnall.
All right. Yeah. Well, I guess thank you for joining me. I hope to talk to you guys sooner rather than later.
Yeah, definitely.
So sign off for now. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.